Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, Maverick family. Welcome back. I'm Rick Walker. You're watching the Maverick News Channel. Welcome, new viewers worldwide. Great to have you with us again tonight. And wow, what a show we have lined up for you. So much to share with you. Politics, politics, politics. Weird politics. Politics as normal these days. We will talk about Gonzalo Lira, the journalist in Ukraine, on his way, if not already there, to Hungary after having been detained by the Ukrainian authorities. That's a free speech issue. What else? Oh, the politics. Trump versus DeSantis, DeSantis versus Trump. I've got some stuff queued up that's interesting and it's making me laugh. We also have, of course, the top story tonight, Meta canceling, starting to now cancel all news content on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. So we've got that. Another J6er arrested. Police in China frisking people looking for cell phone devices that may have VPNs on them. We've got the Barbie backlash, the backlash to the Barbie backlash, and the backlash to the Barbie backlash. So we've got all that. We also have Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, firing back at the poster boy for globalism, Justin Trudeau, after yesterday's attack from Trudeau on Poilievre, saying that the Conservative leader is all about cuts and anger. And we have the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, becoming the target of a heckler. More of what I said we can all expect more of, which is aggressive heckling, aggressive confrontations as we get closer to an election in Canada. It's going to get colorful and it's going to get interesting here when we return right after these messages from not our sponsors, just from us. Don't go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm back. And yes, if you like what we do here, if you watch, if you enjoy the show, if you get something of value out of this, if you feel what we're doing is worthwhile, then yes, please support us. We need your help. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You are the guys who keep this show rolling on the internet. You keep us operational. We don't have sponsors on this show. We don't have any other source of revenue. We've been completely demonetized no money from nobody except for you guys. YouTube demonetized us. Facebook, we're not even broadcasting on Facebook now because we're on a kind of a ban over there. Just overnight, another community guidelines strike against our YouTube channel. They're coming for us all the time. Yes, they are. What can I say? Except that it's just ongoing, censorious behavior. They don't like a certain point of view, whatever that might be, they hammer you. And that's where we're at again tonight. Another community guideline strike. We had just kind of cleared one off, and then they came right back. And this one was leveled against a video that we had posted over a year ago. They went in and found something they didn't like that we had said with regard to Donald Trump, and zip, zo, bat, doop, dow, and bammo. There you go. Community guidelines strike against you and your channel from YouTube. Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. Appreciate that, YouTube. But yeah, you can support the channel at maverickdonations.com or freedomreporters.com. I'll put that up on the screen there for you, freedomreporters.com. And if you ain't got no money, then don't send no money. If you can't afford to do it, then don't do it. But even just a small amount helps immensely. It pays for, all the stuff here, the phone lines, the software, the subscription packages, everything that we need to keep this thing multi-streaming on multiple platforms. And the other way you can support this show is by subscribing, which costs absolutely nothing. On YouTube, subscribe there, hit the notification bell, and please consider subscribing over on Rumble as well. Really important that we continue to grow on Rumble, because that is a free speech platform and we are not going to get banned over there. No issues over on Rumble. And lots of people watching over there. So that's the place to be if you believe in free speech. Freedomreporters.com is the place to support the channel. Really appreciate the past support we've had too. And the censorship continues in a bizarre way now, because Meta is proceeding with its plan to block news access completely on its platform, even for mainstream media outlets. It has now started to actually remove news content, and it's getting international attention because this is the same thing that Meta did in Australia. So this is CNN saying Meta has begun to remove news content from Facebook and Instagram in Canada. The social media giant said Tuesday in response to recently passed legislation in the country that requires tech companies to negotiate payments to news organizations for hosting their content. And that is accurate. CNN got something right. As a result of the move, which Meta had previously said would occur before the law takes effect, Meta's Canadian users will no longer be able to click on links to news articles posted to Facebook and Instagram. The changes began Tuesday and will roll out gradually over the coming weeks, said Meta spokesperson Andy Stone. So, they do point out in this article that, there's this ongoing debate over the relationship between news organizations and social media companies, and specifically in Canada. What the government has tried to do here is overlay the same approach that they've taken with broadcast licensing for television stations, radio stations, etc., for Canadian content, and for payments, you see. So this is all designed to sort of make social media companies pay fees over to the mainstream legacy media in order to support what they're doing, with the argument being that these Canadian media companies will then be able to survive in the face of what is honestly competition for advertising revenue from the social media companies. And the legacy media has not had any success, honestly, in adjusting their business models using any kind of free market mechanisms which is why they are now basically bought and paid for by the government. The government is completely subsidizing and paying for it's all paid for by us, the taxpayers, really, ultimately now in the end, in one fashion or another, because they are no longer viable companies on their own. But news content coming down, not sure where that's going to leave even us. I'm wondering if their attacks on us they've been using copyright issues, which are frivolous and not even warranted, because the copyrights that they're citing for in our case are leveled against music that for which we do have the rights to. In fact, it's all public domain stuff, royalty free, used specifically to avoid exactly these kinds of strikes from these social media platforms, and yet they've struck us anyway. I just got another one the other day on another old video that was posted. So anyway, point is, we can't post to Facebook, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to post to Facebook again. Across the various pages. Maybe sometime we'll get back on there, but right now we're not even allowed to post. So the censorious behavior continues. You know what else continues? Politics. And I should mention, actually, too, that we have a special guest coming up at 7 p.m. Lori will be bringing along a friend, Craig Pasta Jardula, of the very popular online podcast called Convo, Couch. Craig, I don't know what his political views are, exactly what his political ideology is. He has sort of a strange descriptor in some of the online posts that I've seen where he has appeared on other programs and even on his own, where he's supposed to be a progressive, but I don't know if that's really true or not. When I've listened to a little bit of what he has had to say, I'm not sure if he's really a progressive. It doesn't seem to fit, but we'll find out more about him. He is growing in popularity. He's done some stuff with Jimmy Dore, and now he's going to do some stuff here as well on the Maverick News Channel at 7 p.m. But politics, it's becoming spicy. And I laugh. I have to laugh. And I was laughing my face off today when Donald Trump started to post stuff about Ron DeSantis on Truth Social. So where shall I start? Let's start here. This is like some sort of an ad, first of all, okay? So let's just you got to watch this stuff. It's maybe you won't find it funny, but I found all this stuff hilarious because Donald
DeSantis was struggling.
His team, they've just really made the most of what DeSantis has said in the past.
DeSantis was struggling big time in his primary race for governor of Florida. Polls revealed DeSantis was failing so bad, he was losing by a staggering 17 points. Then DeSantis was saved by the endorsement of President Trump. Trump's support was so powerful. Just 2 days after the endorsement, DeSantis took a commanding lead, and it propelled him to being elected governor.
I'd like to thank our president for standing by me when it wasn't necessarily the smart thing to do.
You're welcome, Ron. Unfortunately, instead of being grateful, DeSantis is now attacking the very man who saved his career. Isn't it time DeSantis remembers how he got to where he is?
Make America great again.
Big league. So good.
Build the wall. Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
Truth is, there's only one person who can make America great again.
I love it. It's just politics. It's so spicy. Oh my. And this is the thing, right? Oh, they're best buds, and thank you, Donald Trump. And now it's like they're adversaries because they're both running, and they want that nomination for the GOP, right? And Trump obviously sees DeSantis as his main rival in that race. That's hilarious. And Trump is saying he may not participate in any of the debates coming up. The first one later, I believe this month. I think it's the 25th, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, later in the month. So he posts this. This is also funny. He's showing, Trump at 69% in the polls, Pence at 3%. He's got these other candidates with X's where they don't even register. DeSantis at 12, Chris Christie at 2%, Vivek Ramaswamy at 4, Nikki Haley at 3, Tim Scott at 3. Mike Pompeo's got an X. That's hilarious. I think that's so funny. So funny. Do you think Donald Trump should debate? Do you think, he said he doesn't know if he's going to debate because he might just have to stand back and just watch the debates to try to decide who among them might make a good vice president to run with him. A good running mate. No ego there, right? That's hilarious. I think that's funny. I don't know. Oh my. And then there's this as well. All right.
I want to thank him for what he's done for. I want to thank him for what he's done to fight terrorism. I want to thank him for what he's done for our military. I want to thank him for what he has done to stand by our veterans. I want to thank him for what he's done for our economy.
Trump has almost the entire media against him. Fake news day after day after day. He's facing opposition unlike any other president we've seen. And he is standing tall for us.
I think even his worst critic would say he's been somebody that has been determined to keep the promises he made.
Donald Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. He knows how to negotiate it. And I think that Donald Trump has done a better job appointing judges to both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Appeals Court than any other president in my lifetime, including one of my heroes, Ronald Reagan. So God bless Donald Trump for doing that. Is this Trump country or what?
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Oops, maybe shouldn't have gone so all in on Trump before, but that's the nature of politics, right? And you'll see when this whole process is complete and when it's complete and they've decided who's going to get the nomination, they'll be best friends again. In fact, I would not be at all surprised if DeSantis becomes Trump's running mate. And that would be a powerful ticket. But until then, you'll get more of this. Here's an old post from March 9th, 2021, from DeSantis. He says, while in Southwest Florida today, I also stopped by Publix to check in on their vaccination progress. Our retail pharmacy partners are doing a great job getting shots in arms. Oh, here, I didn't post it up. This whole thing with this streaming software, it's changed. They've changed the way the stuff goes up. So I apologize. There's a delay sometimes because I have to click an extra time before it goes up on the screen. I'm not sure why it changed. Maybe it's something in the settings. Anyway, there's the post. And so Trump knows that will hurt DeSantis with especially voters who, GOP voters who are, concerned about the thing. So that's a liability for him. Politics. Oh, here's Ted Nugent posting today too. He's just so straight up about his views. Kind of like this. He says climate hysteria on top with this picture, and then underneath communism, like an iceberg, right? Only the tip of the iceberg is climate hysteria at the top, and then he says it's communism all underneath. Funny. Politics can be funny. I think that's hilarious. But you know what isn't funny, really? There's another another January 6th arrest. And it's very serious stuff. So a Kentucky man has been arrested, and his name is Barry Saturday. And they're alleging that he was involved in the January 6th incident. And alleged that he was involved in assaults against police officers, a lot of allegations. And they have all this surveillance footage, which I can bring up here, show you some of these images. And there they've got a circle picture of him there, and he's over there and over there. They've got other pictures and these circles, and so they got this guy. So he's in just a teeny bit of trouble. And of course, a lot of those J6ers are still in jail. Oh, did I not put that up on the screen again? I'm sorry. I hate that way that it's changed the way I have to click on things to get images on the screen. So again, I apologize, but here you go. You can see these pictures, and this is from ABC News, their feed. So they have copies of these as well. Of course they do. MSM. And they've got all this closed circuit security camera footage of Barry Saturday. And here's the statement of facts from the court document. Again, an extra click to get it on the screen, but there it is. So it's all right here, laid it all out. And this is a joint terrorism task force that resulted in the arrest, treating him as a domestic terrorist. Very serious, extremely serious crimes. The penalties also likely to be very severe if found guilty. So he's alleged to have been present around what they're calling rioters. Investigators tracked his movements using that surveillance footage. He went inside that tunnel. They followed the footage all through there. And so no word yet on who the guy's lawyer is going to be. That over 1,080 some individuals have been arrested in connection with that January 6th attack. I would say this to anybody out there who is a freedom fighter of any kind, keep all that in mind. You see also people in jail in Canada still to this day out west, the Coutts people. Those guys who were arrested in Coutts, Alberta, they're still in jail after more than, I think, 500 days awaiting trial. So we'll see how that unfolds in court. You should keep it in mind as things progress politically here in Canada. And if you're in the States, same thing. There are risks involved. So I always caution everyone, like think twice before you act, think twice before you post, be responsible, understand what you're getting into, and be a good person. Stay peaceful, man. Politics. Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP, New Democratic Party of Canada, federally, was heckled today. Trudeau has been the target of aggressive heckling in not just recent weeks, but recent months. And just days ago, same thing. Yeah, well, you know what, Ken? Damn right. You should be scared, Ken. because going to jail is no small thing. Ken? Just saying, Ken. What are you saying, Ken? Go ahead. How about you, John? Hey, he says, fuck it. We need a revolution. Drag the traitors out, prosecute, and send them all to the gallows. Got it. Okay, John. Who wants to follow John to jail? Smart guy, John. Posting on social media. So that's John Lies, smart guy, posting publicly that he wants to have a revolution and drag the traitors out and prosecute them all and send them to the gallows. John's a real bright light. Super smart, John. Think anybody's watching out there? How many people do we have watching across our platforms tonight? Do you think any police might be watching, John, or the government? Who wants to follow John? Because John's a real smart guy. Nothing against you, John. Just saying. You want to come here and criticize me because I'm telling people to take care of themselves and take care of their families and be smart and responsible and do the right things? John? Anybody else tonight? Okay, Ken, yeah. Sure, scaremonger. Yeah, you know who's scaring people, Ken? Not me. People who want to get people all jacked up so that they do irresponsible, stupid things, Ken. Anybody else in the chat tonight? Yeah, well, you can say what you want, John, but you know, when you say stupid things, they can be taken in particular ways that might get you into trouble. So, you know, you can be an idiot and say really stupid things like you just said, or you can be smart. Free speech is one thing, and then there's outright flipping stupidity, John. Anybody else? Bring it. Bring it to me. Who else is a freaking idiot out there that wants to take me on tonight? Who wants a revolution? You freaking idiots. Because that's what you are. I'm so tired of you and your stupidity. You're the problem. You idiots. And your revolution, and let's drag them all out and hang them. You freaking morons. I am so tired of you. Who else wants to get violent and be stupid? Who wants to go to jail? Or worse? I'm reading. Who wants to broadcast it on social media for thousands and thousands of people to see? Because, you know, just saying things like that, that in itself could be construed as a crime. That in itself is enough to get you arrested, John. Anybody else? Anybody want to broadcast it on this channel tonight? Bring it. Who else is an idiot? I'm so tired of you. What exactly is a traitor, Pure Knight? Define that for me, treason. Because what people are advocating for is the very definition of terrorism. And that would therefore qualify them as being treasonous and traitors. So if you guys out there think that it's smart to get violent and try to stage some sort of a government overthrow, you're the traitors. Just saying. Morons. Don't want to watch this channel? Get the hell off. Don't agree with me? Bring it. Because you're freaking idiots. I'm so tired of you. What are you going to do about it, Pure Knight? You don't like what Trudeau does? I get it. You want to get violent too? You want to go get your guns? You don't want to go to war in Ukraine. You want that to end. But some of you are ready to have that happen here. You are freaking idiots. I mean, certifiably stupid. Where do you think all that's going to go? I'll have more to say about this in the nights ahead. You freaking morons. I mean, seriously. You tune in the nights ahead. I'll let you know where it's at. You want to bring it? Bring it to me. You bring it to me and I'll show you how stupid you are. Because, I've tried to, pussyfoot around some of this stuff. I've tried to be nice to you, but I've had it. You're going to get people hurt, arrested. You're like you're just like, you're no different than the people who follow Queen Jardula. Okay? You're no different. You think you are, but you're not. You're all screwed in the head. Not all of you. I mean the idiots. Certifiable morons. Revolution. Well, I mean, and choosy, okay, man. We can exile the Knights of Malta. We can do that. As long as it's peaceful and legal. That's cool with me. We can exile them, but it's got to be peaceful and legal. Got to use the right processes. I don't want nobody hurt. I don't want anybody arrested. I want everything legal. I want it above board. And that's what I'm all about, man. If you don't like it, and a lot of people are like, don't watch that Rick Walker guy. He's not a true freedom fighter. Why? Because I don't want to go get guns and shoot people. If you want to go get guns and shoot people, I don't want anything to do with you. You're going to lose. Guaranteed. That's not Canada. That in itself is authoritarianism. Go get your guns, take over the country. Screw you. And then what? Dictator. Because you disagree with all those other people, you're tired of losing the elections, so you're just going to get your guns and get your way. You're no damn better than the guy who's in the office right now. In fact, you're freaking worse. We're going to get rid of him probably in the next election. Actually, Pure Knight, I really like you, man. And it's not so much about you, okay? But people have said that. They have. I've run the video of them saying it, and they continue to say it, and I hear it every goddamn day. That's probably, on this side of the political equation, which is completely being ignored by the people in the mainstream media. It's probably the biggest story going on right now, but it's sort of an unspoken story. And it's been ongoing and really heavy back in Winnipeg and still going on now. And it's heavier now than it has been probably ever. And everybody freaking knows, you just don't talk about it. It's this unspoken thing. And it's right here in the chat tonight. It's right here on full display. And when I just verbalize it, I'm like now suddenly the problem. I'm not the problem. The problem is the political landscape and the people who don't know how to deal with it because brains have been twisted around. You don't know how the system works. You don't know how to fight back. So you say it's all rigged and you're not even playing the same game as the guys on the other side. This is what I was kind of alluding to last night. What's all over Twitter? Man, I don't know what you're talking about. The plan? But you guys, I mean, we need to understand how things work. But you're listening to other morons. You're being led around by the nose by freaking morons who tell you that they've got the secret language or they know how things work. And they don't. They are like 100% wrong right out of the gate, but they go blah, blah, blah about all this political bafflegab using language that makes them sound authoritative, like they know what they're talking about, and they don't have a freaking clue. They're all screwed. And then you're not even on the same page. That's why you're losing. And I've been trying to tell you for the last week or so too, that, the people who are opposed to what you want to achieve, which is freedom, they're involved in screwing with your head. You don't even get it. You're not seeing it. I'm kind of giving up on it. Like, go ahead. Have at it. But I just want to make it clear. I have nothing to do with anybody getting violent. I've stated on this program many, many times before. If I'm talking about any of this stuff, I'm not endorsing it. I am opposed to anything violent. I'm opposed to any kind of revolution. I'm against it. 100%. Will not participate. Do not recommend that anybody goes. Because it's really stupid. And it's not necessary. If you want to win, you got to get smart and stop following the idiots who say that they've got some legal language or something that they've got the secret. They know what to do. No, they don't. No, they don't. They're all leading you down a garden path, and they are either doing it to take money from you or because they want attention, or they're infiltrators of some kind who are leading you astray on purpose. You know how you get oil off your hands or even off an engine block? If you got a greasy, grimy old engine, you know how you get it off? You pour more oil on it. And then it eats away at it and it disintegrates it and it destroys the oil that's there. And then you can easily wipe it off. The people who are opposed to you, they're not telling you that you're wrong. They're telling you that you're right. And they're feeding it and they're dumping more oil on it. And you don't even get it. You guys out there who are ready for your revolution, that's what they've done. And I'm not seeing any real leaders out there among the crowd. And I watch these protests, honestly. This is just me speaking honestly. It looks like a ragtag bunch of little rascals. It looks like a little rascals parade. I mean, it's just like, get serious if you want to win. This is not serious. This is just a recipe for disaster. And I'm showing you what can happen tonight. Another J6er, 1,080 of them arrested. Many of them still in jail. The people from Coots still in jail. You want to go to jail? They'll put you in jail. They don't care. Oh, but they're political prisoners. Yeah, well, you're going to jail if you're not smart. There are other ways to deal with it. You know, you guys do what you want. You're going to do it anyway. I'm not stopping you. Have at it. I'm just saying I'm not going, and I'm just recommending that people be smart, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and don't do anything stupid. And most of you out there are full of crap anyway. You're not going to show up. You're not going to do nothing. You sit there and talk and talk and talk and talk, and you're not revolutionaries. You don't have the guts for it. You don't have the spine. Canadians don't have the spine for it either. And even if you did, you're going to freaking lose. So you might as well just stay home and have an iced tea on the patio. It'd be a lot better. Everybody'd be better off. Fear monger. I'm just tired of you guys with your, I'm the fear monger. What am I scaring people with? Be smart, don't get arrested. Ooh, that's something to be scared of. Whoa, that's radical. He's not a true freedom fighter. F you. It's not even Friday yet. Guys, I care about everybody. I care about Canadians. I care about the country. I care about all of you in the audience. You are. You become like family. We've got probably the best damn audience on this side of the political spectrum. And I don't want to see people get hurt. I'm just being honest with you. A lot of people won't like what I have to say. That's fine. Because you want to go, gotta get a judge, and they're going to fight. We're going to get them and arrest all the prime minister. And yeah, all right. You're all full of it. Stay calm, man. Calm the frick down. I'll be right back. Well, I calm down just a little bit. It's going to be fine. We're all right. It's going to be good. How about this one instead? How about we don't eat the crickets tonight?
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! To bugs!
Yeah, I know. So now I'm being accused of being bipolar. No, I'm not. Clear-eyed. I know what's going on. On to other news. We'll try and rip through some of this before our special guest arrives tonight. You never know, though. I might just fly off the handle at any moment when I go bipolar crazy. Telling people to remain peaceful. Jesus. You know what? Okay, so everybody hates Trudeau. So here's a clip you're going to love. Why not? Well, actually, no, let's start with Jagmeet Singh because he's queued up. Jagmeet Singh, going to see more of this, because emotions are running high in Canada. And somebody today had nasty things to say while he was at a news conference. Here he is, leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada, federally, and watch what happens.
I am giving him now. Almost can't hear because of the background noise on site.
So I don't know if you could hear that or not. The audio was low, but there it was. Somebody called him a POS. shouting, that's making headlines tonight. Jagmeet Singh's calling the guy homophobic because, of course, we're seeing the ongoing escalating confrontations on the street, various protests against the drag queen story times, the LGBTQ stuff, blah, 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 blah. And it just ongoing, and it's a wedge issue, and both sides are using it for political purposes. No question about it. And we're going to see a whole lot more of that. And that was very mild compared to what we've seen with the prime minister and the attacks on him. But as we get closer to a federal election, you're going to see fireworks. And then there's the Barbie backlash, which is, of course, related to all of that. So let's just show you this. Stuff like this being posted, things I'd rather do than watch the Barbie movie. And there's Tabasco sauce going into somebody's eye right there. And that's because, of course, a lot of people not happy with the movie. And among those people is Ben Shapiro, who offered up his review as part of what Forbes is calling the anti-woke Barbie backlash. Here's Forbes magazine online, and they're saying that the anti-woke Barbie backlash failed miserably. Of course, big movie weekend when it all opened up with Barbenheimer, and that's been ongoing. $356 million, apparently, Barbie has now pulled in from the box office. Is it woke? Oh, yeah, it's woke. It's woke. And then Ben Shapiro said that his producers dragged him kicking and screaming to go see the movie, so he did his own review of it. Of course, it was highly critical. Went on and on about it, and Forbes now pushing back against that. So the culture wars continue, but I don't know. Ken's looking pretty hot there with his little powder blue vest thing and his pecs. And there's Barbie in her pink Corvette. It continues. What else do we have for you tonight? What else do we have to rip through here to get to where we need to get? Quickly, Pierre Poilievre responding to Justin Trudeau's attack yesterday, saying that all Pierre Poilievre is doing is fear-mongering, scaremongering. Saying that all Pierre Poilievre does is talk about cuts and anger. Here he is responding today.
Much everyone for coming, and now in English. After 8 years, Justin Trudeau's running out of people to blame. I just finished a tour of Canada, and I was impressed by the incredible courage of Canadians who are suffering the misery that Trudeau has imposed on them. At 8 years, housing costs have doubled. The cost of living is rising. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are common in our streets, and those streets are increasingly filled with homeless people stuck living in tents because of the doubling of housing costs. Now, Justin Trudeau thinks the worst problem in Canada today is that people are angry at him. I think the worst problem is that people can't pay their rent. After 8 years of his inflationary policies, of his shoveling billions of dollars into the bureaucracies that block home building, housing costs are among the worst in the world, nearly double what they are in the United States. Rent has doubled, mortgage payments doubled, needed down payments doubled, all after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. Yesterday, he held a press conference to announce in front of a house to tell you all that he's not responsible for housing. That's funny, because 8 years ago, he promised he was going to lower housing costs. It's also funny that the biggest housing agency in Canada, CMHC, is federal. Mortgage insurance, federal. Taxes, fiscal and monetary policy, federal. Immigration, federal. Infrastructure money, federal. All these things are federal, and yet the federal prime minister claims he has nothing to do with it whatsoever. No wonder he wants to wash his hands of his horrendous and unprecedented record. After 8 years, People are losing their homes. I used to say there were 35-year-olds living in their parents' basements, and people were shocked to hear that. Now, it's much worse. The 35-year-old worries that him and his mother might be on the street living in their cars. I met a 42-year-old carpenter in Sault Ste. Marie who lives in his car. I talked to a housing advocate in Politican who says it's common now for her to meet seniors in that city that live in parking lots. CTV even ran a story of a nurse who lives in her van. Does anybody remember Canada like this? The scenes in our cities where there's tents, where people live on the streets and in parks, have not been this common since the Great Depression. Our refugees cloister in inner cities and under bridges. This is life after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. He's concerned that people are angry at him. I'm concerned for the little girl in Timmins who stepped on a dirty needle, or the mother in Toronto who was hit by a stray bullet. I'm concerned about the sports store owner in Timmins who had his shop robbed for the 4th time in 2 years. I'm not concerned whether or not Justin Trudeau's feelings are hurt because people are angry at him. I'm concerned about the misery that he has unleashed on our streets and in the pocketbooks of Canadians. You know, I looked today at the Journal de Montréal. I'm going to quote, "Health professionals are reportedly seeing more and more of a disease that had almost disappeared, scurvy. This disease had practically disappeared, but health professionals claim that it is due to food inflation, that this disease dating back to the Middle Ages is resurfacing. Quote, people are eating fewer vegetables and fruits, probably because costs have gone up, said pharmacist Régin Lemay. Typically, by eating fruit and vegetables daily, you get enough vitamin C to avoid developing this disease. People aren't getting vitamin C now after 8 years of Trudeau's inflationary deficits and taxes. And now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax from 14 to 61 cents a liter on the farmers who make the food, the truckers who ship the food, and therefore all who buy the food. This is the misery that he has unleashed, and unfortunately, it will only get worse the longer he is there.
And he goes on and talks about how Canada was not like that before Justin Trudeau, which is true, and lays out his economic plan, which we don't have time to get into in detail here tonight because our guest is about to arrive shortly. What we do have time for, though, is this clip from JT just telling someone how wrong they are when they step up to ask a simple question during a recent town hall.
To ask. One is about Ukraine and
First
Russia.
of all, what's your name?
My name is Michael. Canada is traditionally known for advocating for peace. I know we are a member of NATO, but I know we don't have a nuclear weapon. Why has your government failed to draft a peace proposal to end this war in Ukraine?
I'm going to have to call you out, Michael. You're completely wrong about the war in Ukraine. It is not a proxy war between the United States and Russia right now. That's Russian propaganda and disinformation. My job is to call that stuff out.
Right. Yeah, and see, that's why people are angry. Because of that dude right there and his attitude. What else do I have for you tonight? I do want to absolutely talk about Gonzalo Lira, journalist. He was jailed in Ukraine. I think he was in jail for some 9 weeks. For what? He's been critical of the war. He's been critical of the Ukrainian regime, critical of NATO, critical of Biden, critical of the U.S. government's position on this, and by extension, critical of Canada. Because it is a freaking war. It's not even just a proxy war. It's worse than that. It's an attempt to implement regime change in Russia, in my view. It goes much further than just a proxy war. Now, here's Gonzalo Lira. He has been released from prison. And last word, He's on his way, about to cross the border into Hungary, where he's seeking asylum. Even though he's been told not to leave Ukraine, he's escaping. He's on the road out of there. He's posted a series of videos, and he posted a long thread on Twitter, which I'm not very active on Twitter, but I did actually post on there. Let's hear what he has to say. I could sit here and talk about it, but I'll give you just a short clip from his video. Here we go.
I hope you've had a good time. I didn't have such a good time. I spent 9.5 weeks in prison here in Ukraine. I've been out on bail since July 6th. Today is July 31st. And to prove the time, I just checked on my subscription. Defense Politics Asia, which is a pretty good channel, put out a video called Niger on the Brink of Regional War. That should prove the time that I'm recording this video. Now, at the same time that I'm posting this video, I'm posting a long thread on my Twitter account. My Twitter account is Gonzalo Lira 1968. Gonzalo Lira 1968, one word altogether. And in that, I discuss what has happened to me over the past 3 months in some detail. I also include the indictment against me that I'm going to be tried on. I'm going to be tried on Wednesday, August 2nd, the day after tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I posted both the original Ukraine language version and the translation. The translation was by the court-appointed translator, so I have no idea if it's accurate or not. Those of you who speak Ukraine will be able to give a better sense as to whether that translation is accurate, but that's besides the point. I put up the entire indictment in both the original and the translation so that you can see exactly what I was charged with and imprisoned for. Now, the charges are very serious because the penalty is 5 to 8 years in a prison labor camp. I'm 55 years old. And some of you may know, I have a fairly serious heart condition. I'm not going to survive 5 to 8 years. And I've already been told by people who would know that I will be found guilty. And because of circumstances, it would be convenient for me to serve out that sentence, for me to basically disappear. Disappear in a prison labor camp and, potentially die there, either naturally or unnaturally, as the case may be. Now, in the tweet thread, I go into more or less what happened. I composed that tweet thread last night. It took me 2 hours to do it because there was a lot of information and, keeping it to 25 tweets, it's tough. But anyway, the upshot is that I was accused of being a pro-Russian propagandist, basically, cut through the legalese, it was basically that. I was also accused of denying the Russian invasion, which is laughable. I mean, I've always said that the Russians invaded. It's self-evident, I never denied that fact. They said that I was justifying this invasion that was unprovoked. And of course, we all know that it was provoked. It didn't come out of the blue. It wasn't that the Russians one day decided, hey, let's just invade Ukraine. No, it was provoked. And I gave a very detailed explanation as to why it was provoked in a video that really chapped the ass of the prosecutor's office, apparently. The video of mine called Ukraine a Primer, which of course goes into the backstory and the history of relations between these two countries and why they wound up going to war as they are currently embroiled in. So anyway, the point is I'm going to be found guilty. And because of things that happened, corruption and extortion that happened in prison against me, I will be found guilty. I will not get a suspended sentence. I will have to serve out my term and likely die in this prison labor camp.
Eli?
Sorry, hang on.
There you go, Gonzalo.
Sorry
Be
about
out
that.
there, buddy.
I don't have 3 hands. Anyway, so realizing that
That's
my
good
court
for the
date
heart
is the day
condition.
after tomorrow.
Exactly.
And realizing some other information that was quite strange. I was granted bail after innumerable hurdles because when I was originally arrested, I was nominally supposed to get a lawyer, have access to a lawyer, be able to call my loved ones and arrange for bail. Now, insofar as lawyers, I have lawyers up the wazoo. Insofar as loved ones, not as many as lawyers, but I have quite a few that I care about very deeply, most especially my small children. For those of you who don't know, I have 2 children, Veronica, who is 10, she just turned 10. She turned 10 while I was in prison, and my son, Ramon, who is 8. And of course, I wanted to talk to them, but I was not allowed to speak to them during the entirety of my stay in prison. And of course, I wasn't allowed to post bail, even though I had the means to post bail. Now, let me explain that situation, which is very interesting. You see, nominally, on the first day that I was arrested, I could have posted bail. But I was not given the opportunity to do so, to contact the people who would have the cash available to post my bail. And it wasn't that much, it was $11,000, which I don't want to sound arrogant. $11,000 is quite a bit of money for most people. I am blessed by the good fortune of having the means to put together that kind of money at a moment's notice. And so I could have posted bail on the very first day, but the authorities simply didn't allow me to do it, even though they said I could. Now, I was imprisoned briefly for 2 nights. I was in interrogatory prison number 1, that's the name of it. And then after that, I spent the remaining 9 weeks, exactly 9 weeks, in CISO prison, which is also an investigative prison. And that is a prison where individuals who have been accused of a crime are held while their case is investigated by either the police or the SBU who has arrested them. The SBU, for those of you who don't know, is the State Security Services of Ukraine. They are basically the descendants of the KGB, okay? So anyway, I wasn't allowed to post bail, and it was only through fairly heroic measures and a lot of pressure, political pressure from the government of Chile and apparently the State Department as well, because they didn't seem to like the fact that I wasn't being allowed to post bail. I spoke with representatives of the US Embassy 3 times during the 9 weeks I was there. And they just gave me bromides. They made no effort to pull me out, you know. I mean, if only I'd been a black lesbian druggie or a transgender grifter, then maybe they would have done something. Well, no, if I'd been one of those 2 things, I would have been out instantly. But of course, since I'm not, yeah, and since a couple of people who would know have told me that Vicky Newland actually knows about me and hates my guts. So there you go. So anyway, the point is, there was the appearance of unfairness, so eventually I was allowed to post bail. But the bail conditions were very interesting because I had to surrender my passports. I had to wear an electronic monitor. I wasn't allowed to leave the city of Kharkov or the country.
And so what are
they
you
also
doing?
confiscated, of course, all of my computers, my iPad, my iPhone. They also confiscated about $9,000 that I had as emergency cash, you know, the kind of cash you have around just in case of anything. Well, they confiscated that. And they confiscated a bunch of my documents, specifically my driver's license, my Chilean identity card, and the registration cards for my motorcycles. I don't own a car, by the way. And so I was told in no uncertain terms that I had to stay
Who was that
in
dude?
Kharkov and not leave the city under any circumstances, and of course not leave the country. And I would get this ankle monitor, and I would have to surrender my passports. But when I posted bail and was released, my passports were returned to me. I didn't get any kind of ankle monitor. And a few days later, I went to the SBU offices of the investigator who had investigated my case. And he returned my driver's license, my Chilean ID card, and my registration documents for my motorcycles. As you can see, there's my bike. I don't know if you can see it properly. There you go. And so this was very interesting to me. Now, last year, I was detained by the SBU, also for videos that were very critical of what was going on. And they investigated me because they thought, curiously enough, that I was some sort of Russian agent. Okay, of course, I'm not a Russian agent, you know. And I'm just a regular guy living in Ukraine who saw what was happening, was horrified by this war, and thought that the only solution was to sue for peace because it's inevitable. Because if, you know, if a man such as myself, 55 years old, 83 kilos, not in the best of shape, gets in the ring with Mike Tyson in his prime, I mean, we know how it's going to end, right? Yeah, that was pretty much the situation insofar as the Ukraine and Russian conflict is concerned. And perhaps I did not emphasize this enough in my videos, but the purpose of my videos was to point out how horrifying the war was, how detrimental to the Ukraine people and the Ukrainian nation it was. And yet the only solution was to find a peace settlement of some sort, of any sort, to prevent the complete destruction of the Ukrainian nation and the Ukrainian people. Well, that happened. About a third of the population of Ukraine has left the country. 20% of it is controlled and will be annexed by the Russians. And there's no doubt in my mind that they intend to capture much more territory of the Ukraine nation, probably up to the Dnieper River, and take everything east of it. And that will include Odessa, of course. And Ukraine will be broken. It's inevitable at this point, unfortunately. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make is that last year I was detained. I was investigated to see if I was a Russian agent. They realized I wasn't. And I was let go. But I was told in no uncertain terms that I could not leave the city or the country while my case was investigated. And me being a very law-abiding citizen, because the extent of my criminal career up to this point was that in New York City in the year 2000, I was living in Lower Manhattan, and I had a dog, and I would walk the dog without a leash. And one time I got a ticket, $50, which I didn't pay. That's the extent of my law-breaking career. I'm very much a person who believes in civil society and following the rules and following the law. And so I was told that I couldn't leave the country. I couldn't leave the city even, which I wanted to because I wanted to be near my family. So I was a good boy. Later in prison, in CISO, I told this to some of the other prisoners there, because they're not inmates, because none of them have been convicted. Their cases are all being investigated. And some of these investigations take years, plural. Okay, one man I knew had been there for, as he said very proudly, 3 years and 3 months. Another had been there 6 years. Because what they do is that they arrest you and charge you, and they start their investigation, and they'll get around to the investigation when they get around to it. So a lot of times people just sit there forever. And that's basically the justice system in Ukraine. So anyway, the point is that my case was expedited. Prisoners couldn't believe that my case was investigated in a month, exactly a month. By the 31st of May, they had completed their investigation of me being this evil Russian propagandist, and the indictment was drawn up, which, as I said, you can read on Twitter and the thread that I posted at the same time that I'm posting this video. And where was I? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, when I was in prison, and I told the other prisoners how I'd been detained in April of 22, and told in no uncertain terms not to leave the country, the prisoners laughed, and they said, "You idiot. They were leaving the door open for you to leave. They wanted you to leave, you know, less hassle for them. And me, of course, you know, retrospectively, it's obvious, but at the time, I said, no, I can't do anything. They're telling me to stay, so I must stay, you know, like an idiot. That's simple as that. So anyway, insofar as my current, you know, status of being out on bail, and the judge was very clear that I had to, I mean, it was very explicit. I couldn't leave the city, I couldn't leave the country, and I had to surrender my passports. I have two, the American and Chilean. And of course, they also confiscated these documents for my transportation. And yet, when I was released on bail, they gave me all the stuff back. They didn't put the electronic monitor, and they allowed me to keep my passports. And what's more,
okay, do you want more? Do you want more?
No. Stop talking, Gonzalo, for goodness sake. You know what his problem is? He just talks too much.
He has 2 more posts of equal length.
Oh my God, dude.
So that's almost an hour's worth of stuff. And in the next one, he actually says that this was interesting. I haven't watched all of it, but he goes on and says that when he was released the first time, he should have left the country, because when he got arrested again, the prisoners who were in there said, "You idiot. They were telling you to get out of the country. They were like opening the door for you. Like, get out of here because you're just a pain in the ass."
When even the Ukrainian prisoners tell you that, dude, you might want to listen. I'm just saying. Bless his heart. He thinks he's still in the United States. He thinks he still has freedom of speech. He thinks he still has freedom to travel. He still thinks he has freedom of the press. He's in Ukraine, where those things do not exist
at all.
And the law doesn't protect you. And the only reason he's free, and you know and I know, Rick, is because it was getting uncomfortable for the State Department. The State Department was being asked questions about the guy because he does have U.S. citizenship. And it wasn't a good look. So they told their friends in Ukraine to let him out. And what did they tell him to do? Don't leave the country. And what does he do?
He's got to leave the country. He's leaving the country.
The thing that he should have done like a year ago.
Right. Yes, I would have got out if I could. Because what are they going to do once you leave the country? They can't arrest you again, right? Because you're out.
Well,
and if you stay, you're screwed. So what are you going to do?
He should pull a Julian Assange and just go, you know, seek asylum in an embassy somewhere, maybe in Moscow. Why is he going to Hungary? Why didn't he just go to Russia? I mean, Russia's closer.
Michael is asking who the special guest is going to be tonight. I'll let you tell people who the special guest is going to be. But before we do that.
Before we do that.
Scott Ritter apparently has called out Gonzalo Lira, saying that he is an SBU agent.
Yep.
What the hell is that?
I know, it's a little confusing. Those two have been beefing for months.
Give me some insight here. I don't understand.
Let me give you the backstory on that. There's been a Twitter war going on for months now between Gonzalo and Scott. And the last time Gonzalo got himself arrested and released, now that was like last April. And, you know, Gonzalo disappeared for 2 weeks and everybody was worried about him and everyone was asking, is he okay? Is he alive? And Scott was also very concerned about him. But when they released him, Scott found that fishy. And I kind of did too, to be honest with you. And he said, you know, there's only one reason they'd let you go, because you made a deal with them. And I think that's, you know, it was just a guess, an educated guess on Scott's part. But I think it's a pretty good guess. Now, obviously, if they did make a deal with Gonzalo, he must have done something to break that deal or piss them off again. Or maybe the SBU arrested him on orders from the United States. That's possible. We don't know. But I'm sure he'll tell us because he cannot keep his mouth shut. I mean, the thing about Gonzalo is he never knows when to stop talking.
Yeah.
Zip it, buddy. You know, but he couldn't resist getting drawn into a Twitter war with Scott. And then that was kind of an unfair debate because Elon kept banning Scott Ritter. And so Scott was unable to respond when Gonzalo would attack him on Twitter. Now, Scott has since had his Twitter account restored, and now the war continues between him and Gonzalo. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think he's an agent? You think he's working with the SBU, Gonzalo?
No, I don't think so.
No.
What's he got? What does he have to offer them? Unless
That's
he just shuts up, and he can't shut up. So
right.
he hasn't said anything he's been saying is still negative. So I don't think so.
You know, he claims he has a lawyer. Now, if I were his lawyer, I would give him some advice, some good advice. Shut the fuck up. That's what your lawyer would tell you when you're charged with any crime. You shut the fuck up.
Right.
But no, if I were his lawyer, I'd quit. I'd be like, dude, you just cannot shut up. At least wait until you're safely out of the country, across the border in a safe haven, and then make your video and tell the whole damn story.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking too. It was like, do you want to get arrested again? Because
right?
like you've got a cell phone with you, they can track it. You're sitting there, you're making these long videos. He stood there and recorded 3 videos of that length. In that amount of time, they could send a cruiser over and pick you up.
Exactly.
Like, what the hell? Like, duh. I gotta tell you, I'm constantly amazed at how dumb some of these people who want to do crazy revolutionary things are.
You and me both, Rick Walker. I heard your rant earlier, and I have to tell you, I'm every bit as frustrated as you are with people right now. And you know, we're both getting attacked by people who are supposed to be on our side. That's the weird part, right? You're getting attacked by people from the right on the freedom movement. Meanwhile, I'm getting attacked from people on the left who I thought were anti-imperialist and you know, friendly to the cause because of my support for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the fact that I'm working on the campaign. Man, I spent most of my day yesterday dealing with personal attacks, and they censored me. They literally censored me, which is what leftists always do when they don't like something that you, or in this case, the candidate says. They shut down all debate. They block you. They cut off the conversation. They refuse to engage in a civil debate. Now, mind you, these are the same people, and I know it's true on the right and in the freedom movement too. These are the people who don't vote. These are the people who just want to burn it all down. These are the people who say, you can't vote your way out of this.
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
and all they do is complain on the internet. They're keyboard warriors. Now, some of them are actual warriors with like actual guns, and they want to go do an actual revolution thingy. But, you know, how's that going to work out, guys? How do you think it's going to end?
How did it end for the Wagner Group? And they had a whole army. If you even want to view it that way, right? But even they didn't have enough.
Great point. And by the way, there's this fellow in the chat. There's this fellow named Michael who says, Lori, you banned me, remember? I'd like to address that because he always talks about this every time he comes into the chat room. Michael, my friend, I didn't ban you. A moderator, someone by the handle of Big Dice, banned you. He banned you repeatedly in a single night. I was the other moderator, and I restored your access. I restored your account 5 times that night. I was helping you out, bro. So now you know. And don't be lying up in here. I think you just probably didn't know.
Probably didn't. He had no idea.
Yeah. But now you know. I didn't ban you. If you want to get mad at somebody, track down that Big Dice character and talk to him. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week.
Well, now
man.
There's another fence mended right there.
And it's only Tuesday. Jesus, what next?
Well, I'm so glad we're getting along better now.
Yeah, yeah.
We've
Well, can't
averted
we
the
all just get
revolution and
along?
we mended a fence. So
Can't we all just get along? That's my whole point. You know, it's the hypocrisy of the thing. These are the people who say they don't like censorship, but they're always the first ones to censor you when they don't like what you have to say.
That's right.
Or in this case, they don't like what my candidate had to say about Israel, right? These are the people who support Palestine. And here's the irony, Rick. I support Palestine too. We agree on that issue. I disagree with Kennedy on that issue. And they come to me every single time he says something they don't like, talk to your guy. You set him straight. Tell him to change his position. I'm like, nobody can tell Kennedy what to think, what to say. His own campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, strongly supports Palestine. He can't control Kennedy. Kennedy's, he's got that in common with Trump. He's his own man. He's got his own mind, his own point of view, and his campaign staffers and the people around him, they can't control him. You don't put Robert F. Kennedy on a leash. He's going to tell you what he really thinks. He told you what he really thinks about Israel and Palestine. And if you don't like it, well, lump it. But why would you attack people on the campaign who are supporting him? And so basically anyone who supports Kennedy is now kicked out of a so-called anti-imperialist group on Twitter. And they'll block you. They'll block you.
That's why politics is such a difficult thing.
Well, I'll tell you, Kennedy's got his work cut out for him trying to heal the divide. Because some people, they don't want to heal the divide. They just want to fight. They just want to fight. They want to pick a fight with the police. They want to pick a fight with the government. They want to pick a fight with random people like me on Twitter. I mean, and they want to pick a fight with you here at Maverick News.
Yeah, that's right.
They just want to fight.
But the reason we have such a great family here is because we already made up.
Yeah,
we've
that's
already,
the beauty
we've
of it.
already kissed and made up. So everything's cool and people are welcome to their points of view. I'm strongly opposed to violence. Simple
too.
as that.
And it's very Canadian. I wish Americans could do that. Canadians are so much better at letting bygones be bygones and being kind to each other. Americans have never really been very good at that. Americans like to get drunk and fight, boy.
So who's our special guest tonight whenever he shows up?
I hope he shows up. He's running a little bit late. Our guest tonight, at least our scheduled guest, is my friend Craig Jardula. We just call him Pasta. Yo Pasta.
Why do they call it? Why do you call him Pasta?
I don't know. We're gonna have to ask him why people call you Pasta.
Yeah, it's like Craig Pasta Jardula. I was like, is that really your middle name, dude? Like,
did your mama name you that?
Yeah, like she didn't like you or what?
Maybe she really loved pasta. But he's the host of a great show called the Convo Couch. And I really like him. You were asking earlier about his politics. And I guess, I don't know, I should let him define his politics. But he calls himself a libertarian. Probably more of a progressive libertarian, kind of like myself. I guess we would agree on that. But Craig and I agree on a lot. And he's, big supporter of Kennedy. But,
and as he says, is he a commie too? Yeah, probably.
No, he's a
basically
libertarian. Not all of my friends are commies. I got a few commie friends. But, that's another thing people don't understand. They're like, how could you be friends with a communist? How could you be friends with somebody on the left? How could you be friends with a Democrat? How could you even talk to them? Well, that's how you heal the divide. Let me tell you a little story about Kennedy. Back in the early 70s, he was a college kid down in Alabama. And he made friends with former Governor George Wallace, who was his father's nemesis, by the way, when they were trying to integrate the University of Alabama. President Kennedy's nemesis. You remember George Wallace, segregation now, segregation forever.
Yep.
Bobby Kennedy became friends with him, quite good friends. And remember, Wallace was shot. There was an assassination attempt when he was running for president in 1972, the Kennedys reached out to George Wallace, invited him up to Hickory Hill, their home in Virginia, to recuperate after his shooting. He declined politely, but it opened the door to a friendship. And so Bobby Kennedy Jr. lived in Alabama for a few years while he was attending school, met his first wife down there, and he ended up becoming quite friendly with George Wallace. And, we were talking about John F. Kennedy Jr. on the show last week. John F. Kennedy Jr. also forged a kind of friendship with George Wallace later in his life. They said that the old segregationist had mellowed in his years, that he had realized the error of his ways, and he was truly sorry for what he did back in the early 60s and the views that he held, and that he actually turned out to be not so bad of a guy. And George Wallace was featured in a big interview in George magazine. John F. Kennedy Jr. interviewed George Wallace. So it just goes to show you, if Bobby could heal a divide with George Wallace, I think he can heal this country.
You know what? If you knew some of the people that I've been speaking with in the last few days behind the scenes, you would not, like, politically not aligned at all, and it's like we're being friendly, and it would blow your mind.
You know what? I think our guest is in the wrong studio. Pasta just texted me and said, "Hey, I'm in the backstage," and I think he's in the other studio. Rick, you want me to go fetch it? If you want to go, fetch it?
you use your dude, so you go get your dude.
I'll go get my dude.
I'll be over here. I'll run a couple of promos and keep people entertained. I'll do little tricks like that. How did I do that? Magic tricks until you get back. Okay. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't liked, shared, subscribed, please consider doing that. We really do need the support, and that's the easiest way to do it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get your friends to subscribe. Share. Put it out all over the darn place. Share it out. Just share the links on Facebook. That would help us too. Not going to get you banned that way, but sure helps the channel just by posting the links. And it's time to bring in Lori and our guest. Let's see if this works. There he is, and there she is. Well, hello,
right.
Pasta.
How we doing? Let me make sure I got the right audio on. Cool, I do, and I can hear and see you guys clearly. How's everything? I was in the wrong spot.
Yo, Pasta. Sorry about that. I think I sent you the wrong link.
Was that
okay,
my
it
fault?
happens.
Was that my fault? Maybe it was me.
I wasn't late,
no,
though. I just want to let the audience know that I was on time here for Maverick News. I would never do that to them. And
That's right.
Yeah, I'm
You
here
poor
with you.
thing.
right
You
now.
were sitting backstage for 20 minutes just listening to us stall and ramble. And
I'm not listening to you guys, listening to Gonzalo Lira for a little while. I was like, oh, my Lord, would he just, pipe down for just a couple minutes over here, too, as well,
Is
kind of
that- I
sharing the
was
same
curious to get
feelings
your
that you guys
take.
had.
Yeah, kind of thinking he's talking a little too much there?
Well, isn't it odd that he's saying he's trying to get over to Hungary and escape, and then telling people about it? I would kind of be quiet about it until I got to safety, and then, maybe then talk about it after. I don't know what the whole point of him telling people that is, but yeah, I mean, Gonzalo likes to talk a lot. Thank God, a lot of the stuff that he does say, though, is merited. He's got a lot of great information to put out there sometime. And it was weird, the whole Scott Ritter, Gonzalo thing too, as well. That's what happens. And I guess when egos clash, but oh, well.
Indeed. Well, I wish Gonzalo safety, safe passage. I haven't heard an update from him today. I don't know if he's made it safely across the border. You would think now he might update us just to let us know he's okay. Or are we going to find out in 24 hours that he's back in prison in Ukraine, that they nabbed him? Yeah, I don't know. I hope he's all right.
He escaped safely. So
I truly wish him the best, and I don't mean to be rude when I'm telling him to just shut the hell up. It's for your own good, Gonzalo. I say this with love.
I don't get it. Whatever.
Well, hopefully he knows what he's doing. But speaking of love, I just love your show. And I'm so glad that you joined us, Pasta. And we were curious, why do they call you Pasta?
Funny story. Like my Italian grandma came to South Florida when I moved here at a young age to come visit us. And she was packing my lunch one day, and she made me take a bunch of pasta to school, like a big Tupperware with 20 forks to share with the kids. So the kids just started calling me Pasta. Started to complain. They called me Meatball. I shut up. It went back to Pasta. So I just owned it for quite some time. But I've been called Pasta since I was a little kid. It wasn't a name I gave myself. It was a name that was given to me. So I just owned it, and I've been Pasta ever since. And it's not my middle name for real, Rick. My middle name is Richard, and my mom doesn't call me Pasta, and she can't stand that people do call me Pasta. She's always like, your name is Craig. Tell people your name is Craig. But what am I going to do?
Well,
you're
you
looking good.
throw enough pasta at a name, and eventually it sticks.
Yeah.
Like
To the
pasta
wall.
to the wall.
Rick's got
Meet
jokes
the
today.
odd couple, ladies and gentlemen. Meet the odd couple. See, I knew you two guys would get along because you both wear fancy shirts and you're both, sane, reasonable, logical people. And, Rick thinks you're a communist, Pasta. You want to set him straight?
I have no idea. I said probably.
I am not now, nor have I ever been a communist.
I'm not anti-communist, that's for sure. And I think the anti-communist
go.
movement is definitely about pitting the people against each other, pitting communists against capitalists. I purely believe that. I believe the biggest issue we have, the biggest ism that is an issue, is elitism, because they'll stand over any system, whether it be capitalism, communism, socialism, and they'll try to rule as much as they can. And, my business partner, Fiorella Isabel from the Convo Couch, she considers herself an anarcho-communist of sorts. So she is more of the communist. I consider myself a leftist libertarian. I've never been part of the Libertarian Party. I was a progressive, a Bernie Sanders guy, then a Tulsi person. And now, I just consider myself a leftist libertarian because the values of the Libertarian Party are so important to me. Freedom of speech with censorship is a big issue. Freedom of the press, civil liberties, those things, mean a lot to me. And I was able to meet a lot of libertarians on the Tulsi Gabbard campaign. So I kind of, called myself a leftist libertarian, but I don't even know if there's any such thing as left or right anymore nowadays. Everything seems to be so conflated, but I do that. So when I do meet people within the freedom movement, because I met a lot of Trumpers over the last several years being an election integrity activist, I want them to know that it's possible to talk and speak with people who think differently than them, to not pay attention to what's on the TV where you see the Democratic Party, which they call themselves leftist, and I don't think they're left at all. They just seem to be crazy. So the only reason I identify at times is to open up the discourse, to show that it's possible to have, talks and opinions with people who think differently than you, because I think that's the most important thing, is pushing back against this divide and conquer. So that's where I'm at nowadays.
Absolutely. And, I've been a libertarian for 27 years. I left the Democratic Party back in 1995. And I'm no longer a member of the Libertarian Party. I guess you'd call me a small L libertarian. I tend to lean to the left. Nowadays, I just call myself a Kennedy libertarian. There's a lot of us.
Yeah.
What about you? Are you a Kennedy libertarian or?
Well, no, I mean, well, for the record, Lori, and I got to explain this to a lot of people. I'm not necessarily supporting RFK. I'm supporting his candidacy, his campaign, because I believe there's a political discourse that's being brought to the table that wouldn't be brought if he wasn't there. Issues that are important to me, COVID issues that, are never talked about. They're swept behind the rugs, and no, it's not over. There's still a lot of things going on. There's still 70,000 workers in New York who haven't gotten their jobs back because they refused to take the shot. The WHO is trying to have their power grab. People are dying of myocarditis. All these things that are out there that are really important to me. Food sovereignty, which I think it really ties into the whole Medicare for all argument. As a Bernie Sanders progressive, our number one issue was Medicare for all. We were sick and tired of seeing people getting shut out, not having health care. We thought it was a human right, and I still think it's a human right. However, our Medicare system, our healthcare system, is not a healthcare system. It's a sick care system. It only deals with the symptoms. And, RFK, his life work has been fighting against the polluters of this world, fighting against the big farms, fighting against Monsanto and these other companies. So I believe that food sovereignty goes hand in hand with Medicare for all. I made a tweet not too long ago. I took a poll. I said, what's more important nowadays? Medicare for all or getting rid of Monsanto? Now, I think they're equally as important. But we have to start looking at the front end and not just the back end. I don't want to put into a system for Medicare for all that's going to dictate what I have to put in my body. And that's what we have right now. So these conversations that are coming forth with RFK are so important. And of course, the Ukraine-Russia situation is so important. I think he can be better on the whole situation. When he calls Putin a thug and a gangster, I don't like that at all. I think Putin had no choice but to do what he had to do. However, the way he kind of talks back about his history, about putting ourselves in Russian shoes, about how Russia won World War II, really humanizing the situation. I think that's important. And also censorship, which is the biggest issue on the table. Take away our voice, and what do we have? So these issues that Kennedy is bringing to the table, maybe I've been a little bit advantageous with my post and my fundraisers, and people immediately think that, oh, Pasta's an RFK Kennedy guy. No, I appreciate his campaign just as much as I appreciate Cornel West's campaign. I think Cornel West is best on Israel-Palestine. Like you, Lori, I feel the same way. I think that RFK has this totally wrong. But I don't look at candidacies nowadays at what they don't offer. We know we're not going to get any love for Israel-Palestine with RFK. You know what I'm saying? It's obvious. I'm the one who went up there and asked him that. Everybody's chastising me.
That's right. Yes,
I'm
you were.
the one who went and asked him that.
You challenged him on it in New Hampshire.
Open up this can of what worms. So for me, I always look at what are we going to get from the candidacy, from the campaign. And there's a lot of things we're going to get. The political discourse right now I think is what's needed mostly, because we have a comatose nation who's so politically ignorant and they're just sleeping. And you know what? It's unfortunate that the playing field is that they only come around once every 4 years when there's a campaign. But these are the cards we're dealt. And I'm going to deal with them, and I'm going to handle them as best I can. I'm going to play with what's dealt with me. So I'm just doing my best to use him to further my movements, the things that I think are important. I'm going to use RFK to push those incidents. And where I think he's wrong, I'm going to push back against him as well. And I've already proved to do so. So that's where I'm at.
Right on. And, one of the things I get attacked for all the time on the left is, and just yesterday I was asked by the mob, hey, is Kennedy paying you to say the things that you say? And I'm like, no, I'm a volunteer. And they attack me for that. They're like, what are you, dumb? He's rich. Get you some money, girl. Make him pay you. And I'm like, but, if he paid me, if I worked as an employee of the campaign, that would take away my freedom to disagree with him from time to time. On the issues where I do disagree, and Palestine is one of a few, we don't disagree much. But when we do, I like to have the freedom as a journalist to be able to critique that. As a commentator, I wouldn't be able to do that if I was employed by the campaign. I would be just another, paid flack for the campaign.
listen, if you got beef with with somebody who's running, a politician, someone with power, go at it. I have no problem whatsoever. But when you start attacking me personally or the followers, I think that's wrong. If you're gonna support, Cornel West, I'm surely not going to call you a cultist or a fanboy or girl or say you're a sycophant. You know what I'm saying? I certainly had an interview with Cornel West, and if you haven't seen it, I encourage people to go look at it. He's not sharing it. Cornel West is not. He shares all his other interviews, but he didn't share mine on his Twitter. But at the end of the day, if that's the way you stand, that's how you feel. That's the way you feel. A lot of this treatment right now, Lori, kind of reminds me of the treatment we got as Tulsi supporters when I was totally supporting Tulsi, going to vote for her. I don't even know if I'm going to vote for RFK right now. I haven't decided that. If the libertarian candidate comes along and he's great on he or she is great on Palestine, and he or she is great on COVID, the two areas where I think RFK is great on COVID, which is so important to me, it's equally as important as what's going on in Israel, Palestine, and Cornel West is there. But flip-flop, they're off on each other's, the opposite issues they're the best on, and that one libertarian candidate is great on both of those issues. I'm going to vote for that libertarian. Right now, people like David Smith and, Scott Horton and some of these libertarians, Judge Napolitano, all these guys that are coming out. My friend Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown, they're good on those two issues, and those two issues are very important to me. I might vote for that libertarian. My vote isn't, it hasn't been cast yet. So when people just say, oh, you're supporting RFK, they're wrong on that. Maybe I haven't made myself clear. And maybe, like I said, I've been a little advantageous with my fundraising, because I do believe it's important to go out there and cover these issues. But, if you do like RFK, you don't like RFK, it pays to get guys like me and people like you in the room, because we'll push back when we think he's wrong. And, we'll lift him up when he's right, and we'll push him back when he's wrong. But we certainly shouldn't be attacking each other right now. That's the shame about everything that's going on.
So how's he going to win? Because the DNC doesn't believe in anything democratic within the party. It's just a machine. And it looks to me like they just generally select a candidate and go with that. And all of the rest is window dressing. So what's his path forward to victory? Short of Biden, of course, just keeling over and falling down again and not getting back up.
Well, Biden might slip in the shower again. My old business partner, Steve Poikin, used to say he's going to step on a rainbow. Something's going to happen. I still believe that's going to happen. I believe they're going to push Gavin Newsom. I really do. And here's the thing. I don't believe that Kennedy will win. I don't believe he can win, because I believe it's a rigged system. However, the political discourse that's going to come about is more important to me than anything else. Having discussions about food sovereignty is important. Having discussions about what happened during COVID is important. Having discussions about what happens in Ukraine, Russia is important. And certainly speaking about censorship is real important. And I know there's a lot of people who say, well, man, RFK and the politicians, they don't know the issues. No, they don't. But RFK has 2.1 million supporters right now on his Twitter. It's growing. And if his megaphone is going to be much louder, I care about the issues. So I care about it reaching to as many people as possible. So I am all for that. So that's what I define winning. For me, winning is if we have a comatose nation that is going to wake up and listen. So be it. I'm going to take those victories.
Rick, I'll try to answer that question. How's he going to win? That is the most frequently asked question that I get, and probably you get, Craig. Anybody who's shown some support for Kennedy, we always get asked, but the Democratic Party hates him. That's readily apparent. So how's he going to win in the Democratic Party? And here's the answer. When it gets right down to it, politics is math. It's a game of math. He can't win without the votes. And he's got to win these primaries by such huge margins, right? That they cannot deny him the nomination. If he comes to the convention next summer in Chicago with so many wins under his belt, with so many delegates in his pocket, if they try to yank the nomination away from him, there's going to be a riot on the convention floor. It's not going to be like it was with Bernie in 2016, when Bernie was, screwed, and he told his supporters to sit down. I'm sure you remember that, Craig. Yeah. Bernie was like, oh, no, don't challenge Hillary. Just go with the flow. Don't cause a ruckus. Don't make a scene. we've gone so far past that point. People are so angry at this point. They don't trust the DNC. They don't trust the electoral process. If it's clear that he's coming in there with a majority of votes and they try to take it from him, all hell's going to break loose. All hell's going to break loose.
I got to say, you're a lot more enthusiastic than me. Like I said, and I don't want to get any trouble over here on YouTube and stuff like that. I just don't have a firm belief in the system. I'm an election integrity activist, and I've been to 7 countries and observed their elections in Latin America, and I can tell you our election system is one of the worst. Not one country in Latin America, those 7 countries I went to, had mail-in ballots and drop boxes out in the middle of nowhere, a month of voting, proprietary software counting their votes. I mean, you know, I went to Honduras and Nicaragua. Was one of the best elections I've ever saw. You know, and you have 1 day of voting. You have to show up at your designated precinct with ID. It takes about 10 minutes to vote. The chain of custody starts at the door, public counting, so everybody knows what's going on, and you get results that night. We don't have that system. But, you know, what I do think is possible, there could be some challenging through the courts. Number one, if he does get cheated, and I think he will, you know, will he take on some of these sore loser laws and say, I'm going to run as an independent candidate? You know, I believe the best way forward too as well is if there is unity between the Cornel West group and the RFK group after he gets cheated in the DNC, if that does happen. And that's why I'm so critical when people go attack each other, because I believe that, you know, that unity is needed as a society. But there's 2 things to remember when people talk about the DNC lawsuit. Number one, Bernie Sanders was not part of that lawsuit. That was a lawsuit on the behalf of his followers who filed that lawsuit. Number 2, Bernie also made that lawsuit moot because he acquiesced. He gave Hillary Clinton the nomination by acclamation. If you go back and watch the DNC convention, he says, I'm going to suspend the rules, and by acclamation, I give it to Hillary Clinton. People should have sued Bernie Sanders for doing that, not the DNC. And that's where people get lost. So if Kenny were to attach himself to a lawsuit, you know what I'm saying, and fight, or if he tries to run as an independent or the green ticket would say Dr. Cornel West, and he tries to take on these sore loser laws, which a lot of people consider them be unconstitutional, then we might have something there. There are avenues in which they haven't been tested. And here's the thing, Lori and Rick, if we don't try, we'll never know. Right? So let's give it a shot.
You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see an RFK Cornel West ticket. I think they'd be a terrific duo. They'd be great together, no matter which party, whether it's independent, green, Democrat, whatever they see fit. But I think they'd be a great match. That's why, like you, I'm quite disturbed when I see their supporters attacking each other. And I've seen Cornel, the candidate, attacking Kennedy. But I've never seen Kennedy attack Cornel West, and Kennedy's never had a bad word to say about Donald Trump. He doesn't even have anything really bad to say about his primary opponent, Joe Biden. You know, he's trying to run a very clean and healing campaign to bring people together. And I think that's what our country needs. I know a lot of people may disagree with me because they'd just rather fight. But speaking of a fight, let's talk about politics and winning these primaries that people say it can't be done. And they always ask, what's the strategy, right? What's the plan? Well, you know, the first 2 primaries historically in the nation have always been Iowa and New Hampshire. But the DNC did a little switcheroo on the calendar this year, and they're already started to rig it. They rigged it to put South Carolina first because that's the state that was the big turnaround state for Biden back in 2016. He seemed to have that one all sewn up. So they're saying, you know, the New Hampshire and Iowa have state laws that say they have to go forward with their primaries regardless of the DNC calendar. So it looks like they just might go first. Bobby's been campaigning very heavily, especially in New Hampshire, but also in Iowa. And, you know, the DNC fired back and said, if you go forward with those primaries and you don't abide by our calendar, your delegates won't count at the convention. So in other words, all that effort, all that time and money spent winning in New Hampshire and Iowa won't matter when he gets to the convention because they'll throw out his delegates, you see. So, what he's trying to do now is he needs to pivot, and he's doing that to focus on winning South Carolina, because that is probably going to be the big primary that he has to win. I think it's important that he beats Joe Biden in South Carolina, and he really needs to go out and win the black vote. Biden couldn't have won without the black vote. Really, no Democratic candidate can. Now, if a guy named Robert F. Kennedy can't win the black vote in America, then there's something wrong, you know? He is greatly beloved by the black community. So he went to South Carolina this week, and I wanted to show you an interview that he did, a little clip from a local TV station here, because it's all about how is he going to win in South Carolina? What's the plan, Stan? And he'll tell you right here.
Robert Kennedy Jr. has faced a number of labels: anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist. But now he is a Democratic presidential candidate. And we sat down with him exclusively here in Charleston at the memorial for the naval for his once served. The Kennedy name with you everywhere you go. You are now running for president. I think my biggest question would be why and why now? And especially in the face of all the criticism that you faced. So often you look up your name and it says conspiracy theorist right before your name. Your own family has criticized you. A family member recently said your presidential run is a vanity project. So why run, and why run now?
Yeah, and by the way, my uncle served here briefly in 1942, and he was in this is John F. Kennedy. He was in the Office of Naval Intelligence, which was the predecessor to the OSS. I'm running for president because I want my children to grow up with the same pride in our country that I did. I grew up thinking with a very, very good reason that this country was the greatest country in history, that we were an exemplary nation, that we were the template, the model for democracy around the globe.
In regards to the files in your uncle's assassination, President John F. Kennedy, we know that not all the files have been released. If you become president, will you release all the files?
We have a law in this country, the JFK assassination documents law, that says that all those documents legally have to be released to the public. Why are they withholding 5,000 documents illegally 60 years after my uncle's death? You know, all the people who were involved in that murder are now dead. So who are they protecting? And clearly, you know, there's institutional anxieties about releasing that law, but the American people are entitled to them. It's an important thing for us to understand what happened. It was a coup d'etat against American democracy. President Trump promised that when he became president, he was going to release them because it's his legal obligation to do so. President Biden promised that he would. Both of those presidents broke their word to the American people.
How do you think you'd be able to release them when we have a Republican president unable to, and a Democratic president?
The president can release them. Both of those men decided not to. But that is not going to happen with me.
Something else I wanted to ask real briefly, the accusations of your anti-Semitic comments. After you were heard saying those, you went on Capitol Hill under oath. You said you'd never said anything anti-Semitic in your life. You then said you were a dedicated defender of Israel, even more so than President Biden. Then you went to New York. You sat down with some Jewish leaders in New York. Then you visited the grave of a prominent rabbi. So you've done a lot to say that those.
And by the way, the meetings that I had with Rabbi Shmuley in New York, and the meeting, my visit with Dov Hivkin, who was, you know, when the visit to Rabbi Shearson's grave, when my father all visited him when he was alive, those were arranged prior to, you know, these allegations. People knew that I was going to do those visits prior to making these false accusations that I had made anti-Semitic statements. I've never made an anti-Semitic statement in my life, and my program on Israel is much better than any of the Democrats. I'm the only Democrat who has condemned the transfer of $2.5 billion to Iran when Iran is building nuclear weapons.
And I know,
But listen, I am right now a threat to the DNC and to President Biden. And for a long time, the policy of the White House was to ignore me, hoping that I would go away.
On your website,
So I'm going to stop that there. He says that the DNC just wants him to go away, which we all know is absolutely true. Pasta, I was going to ask your thoughts on that because I haven't really heard you weigh in on and maybe you did, I might have missed the show, but have you weighed in on how the Biden administration is now pivoting and saying that they want to end our special relationship with Israel? That came as a shock. I thought the timing of that was interesting because it was the same day that Kennedy was in New York having that meeting with Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Any thoughts on that?
Well, if Biden says anything, it's just for, standing for votes. I think at the end of the day, we understand where Joe Biden will stand with Israel. He's called himself in the past, I am a Zionist, if you don't remember the famous quote. And nothing I see from anybody in Congress is going to pivot away from making sure that they're, in the pockets, the Israeli lobbyists in their pockets, and they'll be loyal to Israel. I hate this argument right here, too, as well, because as he's trying to prove that he is not anti-Semitic, what's really getting conflated is the difference between being anti-Semitic and being anti-Zionist, right? I mean, that is the big problem and the issue over here. And now he's put himself in a position where he has to show that he's not anti-Semitic by being so pro-Israel that it's a turnoff to a lot of people in the anti-establishment movement. So, also then he doubles down talking about Iran and not having them have nuclear weapons. Well, that has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic or, anti-Zionist. That has everything to do with just making a geopolitical move. Iran, the CIA's first regime change took place in Iran. And when he said stuff like, Israel is a beacon of democracy and a field of a sea of totalitarianism. Well, whose fault is that, right? How many radical groups from the Mujahideen to Al Qaeda has U.S. foreign policy supported? We're the reason why a lot of these dictatorships or theocrats or whatever they want to say are in there. We supported the kingdom for quite some time. This is all by our own doing, U.S. foreign policy. So for him to make these statements, I certainly disagree with him, and I hope he doesn't continue on with them because, we have to look and see, he's mentioned in Latin America, the way our foreign policy, he once mentioned on David Smith's show that the reason why so many people are coming from Guatemala is because we constantly mess with their government. We constantly overturn who's there, and we do this in a lot of Latin American countries. The Monroe Doctrine is alive and well, and there's still an occupation of the United States taking place with all our military bases in Latin America. But then he also pointed out the reason why there's nobody from Costa Rica coming here and so many people are coming from Guatemala. Well, in Costa Rica, we don't mess with that government. We haven't overturned their presidencies. The same thing's taking place in the Middle East, and he has to acknowledge that. So unfortunately, with this whole push to not be anti-Semitic, he's, I think, going overboard. And his position is quite, alarming. I don't like this position at all. However, you had pointed out too as well, Lori, and this is the harsh reality. Unfortunately, people don't look at Israel, Palestine, and the voters in America or the people in America as a top priority. They don't even look at foreign policy as a top priority. They hide the COVID protocols and regard foreign policy. So it's not going to hurt him that much politically. However, there has been a wedge between the anti-establishment movement, and I just don't agree with him on this position here.
Right. And it's interesting, this pivot that Biden has suddenly made because he was so Zionist his entire career, so pro-Israel. Now, all of a sudden, he's shaking the finger at Israel and saying, if you don't clean up your act, I'm going to end our special relationship. Do you think that's just a pander to the left to try and get their votes to say, hey, I might actually support Palestine? And do you think that the leftists who are now attacking people like me, who agree with them on the issue, are going to go vote for Biden?
No, I don't think they're going to vote for Biden. I don't think he's going to turn any heads. I don't believe anybody believe him anyways. I don't think that this move to call him and try to frame him as an anti-Semite was going to work anyways. They're still sticking with the anti-vaxxer, kind of label. We see this as that they're sending out notices in New York to try to get him removed off the ballot. So I don't think it's going to work anyways. But there are people who are going to vote for Biden no matter what in the Democratic Party because of the "but Trump" mentality. So, listen, RFK, he's pivoted to South Carolina. He's going to try to win some votes over there. But unfortunately for him, the Republicans are going to have a primary. And there's a lot of conservative voters who, because of this one issue that the COVID protocols, would have voted for him if there was no primary in the Republican side. But there's going to be a Republican primary. So he's going to lose a chance at some voters. It's an open primary there, which is a good thing. But also, too, the way the rules are set up in South Carolina, the voting system, there's DRE machines. Let's not forget that Joe Biden was in 7th place, and then he came out of South Carolina number one. The person who was in 2nd place and the person who was in 4th place dropped out to endorse him. And there is a machine there, the Clyburn machine, the Clinton machine. I used to shake my head, and it was really confusing to me why black people in South Carolina voted supposedly for the Clintons, Hillary Clinton, over Bernie Sanders. So, people can shake their head and scratch their head with the Kennedy thing, but, it just seems like, people will vote because they're scared, of the "but Trump" situation. So you're going to see them back Biden in South Carolina. Not to mention, like I said, these DRE machines, these direct response recorder devices where you can go up and push things and buttons, and then they take the chip and go count it somewhere else. There's not a lot of transparency in that voting system in South Carolina, and that's another thing the Kennedy campaign is concerned about when it comes to South Carolina. So I don't see a pivot to Biden just because he's saying some guff right now.
Absolutely. And speaking of South Carolina and getting the black vote, I don't know if you saw this interview that Kennedy did with Matt Hoffa.
Yeah.
Oh man, really interesting. He did this kind of barbershop interview, and he's just trying to talk to the black community, and I thought it was very real. No script, took any question, didn't dodge any questions, and was just keeping it real. And one of the huge issues for Black Americans, 38% of people incarcerated in the United States are Black, and a lot of them are locked up on minor marijuana drug offenses. Most of them are not even violent drug offenses. But in this interview, and I wanted to play this quick clip, we talked about rehabilitation and how to avoid recidivism through education. And I thought his answer on this was very interesting.
He's not as old as definitely not. But the reason I ask these questions, and specifically for the state institution across the country, is because what I realize it changes the mindset, right? I'm someone who was a recidivist who constantly went in and out. Most of my life when being out in this world. And once I got a bachelor's degree because it was an opportunity available to me. It changed my way of thinking. Yeah. And now not only myself, but a plethora of men and do it. They're not. So my question to you is that something that you think you can institute as a foundation in these state prison systems in order for people to be paroled? Like you have to get an associate if you want to be paroled.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I don't know how I would do that with it. I would, well, certainly, and that's an inspiring story and really a very convincing story. And I'm certainly, and my father devoted himself to that. In fact, when he died, I have a friend who's in a 12-step program with me when I first came in, and he was a prisoner in Sing Sing in Austin. Mm-hmm. And he said that the day my father died, that they all wore, that he had been an addict at that point. He had, and they all wore, they all wore, a lot of the prisoners wore black armbands because of the, care that my father had taken to try to provide those kind of opportunities to people in prisons across the country. It's something I want to do. It clearly is cost efficient. If we're educating people and stopping recidivism, what better outcome can you have?
Exactly.
That, is an inspiring story. If I do get elected, I want you to, call me up and hold me to that
I'm ready to
promise,
lobby for that, man. Seriously, I'm ready to lobby
I'm
for
going
that.
to give you my cell phone and
Boy, got a job.
That's right.
There we go. Let's go.
What did you get your degree in?
Liberal arts.
But there's not a lot of money in that, is there?
I'm not in that lane at all. But the great thing about getting an education there is because it helped me with critical analysis skills. It helped me be a better writer. It helped me see things way differently in the free world and inside. It helped me build businesses. So it wasn't so much for the actual liberal arts degree. It was more so for the skills.
He actually helped build the business while he was inside.
Yeah.
That's flourishing now.
Yeah.
He still services people who are in business.
Publication business, social media magazine for prisoners.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's like all over the country now.
What is it called?
Now you gotta tell. It's called YKTV magazine.
YKTV.
It's an acronym for You Know the Vibes. You know the vibes.
Yeah. I was there.
Yeah. But that's what it's called. It's an informational tool for incarcerated individuals to stay in tune with the times, learn about laws that are changing, look at some girls too. Comedy, exclusive interviews, a lot of stuff that comes
I've been on the cover.
Yeah, he's been on the cover.
Yeah.
A lot of the guests that come here, we take those interviews, we put them in the magazine so that way they can be informed on what's going on with some of their favorite celebrities and politicians.
I've advertised in it. It's great.
So yeah, I wonder how Joe Biden would answer that question. Want to take a guess?
I don't even know if Joe Biden can answer a simple question like, what's your name right now? It's pretty scary. And that is a lot of the, when we're looking at the situation, like I said earlier, we have to, deal with the cards we were dealt. We have to play in the field we're in. And with these Democrats right now that are running things, for them to go unchecked, whatnot, that's why at one point I was very upset with RFK running as a Democrat. Like, why would you do that? Run as an independent. But now he has the Democratic Party. They have to pay attention to them. They have to answer to what he's doing. He is challenging them every single step of the way. And I'm thankful for that. I can see the beauty in that when I was very upset with that. But this was not a surprise to me because he does things. And this is why he pushed for New Hampshire. I got in the room with Kennedy. There was no problem. He took questions. He was, he might not have liked the question, but he's going to answer it. And he'll always do that. And that's something that's good. I hope to God he does take the interview with Max Blumenthal. I think Max is great when it comes to Israel. And I'd love to see that. But this doesn't surprise me at all. It kind of reminds me of watching his father, an old school video of his father walking around in a poor neighborhood in Mississippi, a black neighborhood in Mississippi, and talking to the people there, talking to the voters. And some of the questions he was asking were so like, just you would learn. He was asking people, did you ever hear about this program? Do you know how to access it? So he wasn't just touting this one particular program that was going to help the working class. He was talking to people of, do you know how to get to it? Do you know how to access it? So, I see RFK cut from the same cloth of his father. And there was another good question too, that he had answered to as well, is like, how can we be assured that you'll do what you say you're going to do? Well, he has a history. He has a history of fighting some of the biggest corporations in the poorest neighborhoods. He's done that for quite some time. And it's a shame that is being overshadowed by his awful stances on Israel. And they are awful in my mind. But he's done this work for so long, and he has fought for some of the most vulnerable against some of the most richest corporations for quite some time. So that's how we can be assured he'll be there. And also, the other side about this whole situation is what Gentleman was talking about. Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. When the crime bill was signed, almost overnight, so many programs for people in jail were pulled, whether it be them trying to get a welding degree or an engineering degree or what do you call a Series 7 so they can, do real estate or work in the stock market when they get out. With the crime bill, it punished them. And overnight, all these grants were pulled right away from them. So I wish he would have said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to repeal that crime bill. I'm going to make sure that people inside prisons can get access to these grants so they can get these degrees so that when they do get out, they have a fighting chance, because that's another part of the equation. And this goes directly at the point is why would anybody in their right mind vote for Joe Biden? 81 million votes. I don't buy it.
81 million votes, buddy.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, well, you have to believe it. This is YouTube. We're not allowed to question it.
Oh, yes. It's the fairest, safest election of all
He's the
time.
greatest president ever, man.
Greatest.
Yeah, just ask him. He'll tell you. You brought up a terrific point and from that interview, and I wanted to play that particular clip because, nobody trusts the voting process anymore. Thanks, 2020. We've had questions about elections in the past, but never was the trust so broken with the American people and the Canadian people. The Canadians are pissed off at their election system too. Nobody trusts the media. Nobody trusts the government anymore. Nobody trusts a politician. And even when a guy like Bobby comes along, who I know, because I've known him for 16 years, I know he's an honest man. But how is he going to convince the people that he's an honest man? Like you said, he was challenged to debate Max Blumenthal on the Israel-Palestine issue. He said yes. And immediately everybody was skeptical of his yes. They're like, oh, he's going to back out. He's not really going to do it. And I'm trying to tell him, once Kennedy gives his word, he is a man of his word. But why should they believe me, right? Why should they believe him until he actually shows up? And so the question that was asked here is, why should anyone trust you? And I want you to take a listen to his answer.
I mean, with the resistance that your father and your uncle face, you don't fear.
I'm much more scared of dying. I am much more, and that we're now just addicted to permanent war. And there was a whole generation of Americans in 1776 that gave us this Constitution, and many of them died. Between 25,000 and 70,000 Americans died in the Revolutionary War to give us the Bill of Rights. Now, this incredible middle class, and that's all being stripped from us. And so, I think all of us have to be willing to take risks and make sacrifices so that our kids can have those same rights.
When we speak about the day, because we often in this room speak about the day, other names.
Who?
Where's Lori?
I don't know. I guess I pissed her off. She's gone.
Oh. Well, that's terrible. I don't know where she went. She'll be back.
I'm sure.
She always
that was the clip
there she
where
is.
Yeah, here she is. Lori.
She's been having some internet issues. We've been having internet issues here too for the last week.
Yeah, I
or
know.
So.
It's been a little spotty, some of her stuff.
I don't know.
Do you want me to pull that up real quick and share it? I have it. If you want, I can play that clip.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Let me pull it up right here.
Hey guys, sorry about
Hey.
that. I don't know what's going on with StreamYard. I got kicked out of the studio again. Even StreamYard hates me now. So I'm
You're
back.
just causing
You want me
all
to
kinds
try
of
that
problems.
clip again? I've got it queued up here. If you want me to try again, it just went haywire. You want me to start that over? How much did you miss?
Lori,
I don't
if
know
you
because I
wanna-
kind of took a
I'm
break
sorry.
there and came back, so I don't know.
Lori,
Where
if
you
you want to share it in the private chat, I have good internet right now.
Oh,
Play it.
good. Okay, let me send you the link then, Pasta. Thank
Send
you.
the
I
link in the
appreciate
chat
that.
and I'll play it.
Yeah, we had a tornado here a few months back that took my roof off and destroyed a lot of the infrastructure, and our internet just hasn't been the same since, while AT&T is having to rebuild a lot of infrastructure after the tornado. So I do apologize for that. And I put the link in the private chat for you. And we're just going to play that full clip, the whole clip there.
I got it. And if you can
Thank
give me
you.
sharing, let me.
You are awesome, sir.
Okay, here we go.
You're a pro. Appreciate that.
It's there. If you can just share it.
And let me add that in. Let's try that again, shall we? Roll them.
Oh, I don't know if is that the right one.
I think it is. It says, "Why
Oh,
should
this
we
is
trust
not the
you?
right one, huh?
Why should anyone trust you?" Is that the name of it?
This video is unavailable.
What? Don't tell me YouTube killed it. Did they really?
There it is. There it is.
There. It's YouTube. It wouldn't surprise me if they
I
did.
mean, with the resistance that your father and your uncle face, you don't have a fear of this?
You want to pick a fight with these people?
You know what? I am much more scared of dying. I am much more frightened that my kids are going to grow up in an America where they don't have rights, and that we're now just addicted to permanent war. And there was a whole generation of Americans in 1776 that gave us this Constitution, and many of them died. Between 25,000 and 70,000 Americans died in the Revolutionary War to give us the Bill of Rights. Now, and then we created this incredible middle class, and that's all being stripped from us now. And so, I think all of us have to be willing to take risks and make sacrifices so that our kids can have those same rights.
When we speak about the day, because we often in this room speak about the day, Biden and the other names that you named, those are people that, they're going to deteriorate. They're not going to last. So who comes after them? Or would you say that it is a force that's maybe even beyond human beings?
Yeah, well, it's a self-perpetuating system where, we used to at least have one party that was anti-war. The Democratic Party was always anti-war and the Republican Party was pro-war, but now they're both pro-war. And, so it's self-propagating. The people who rise to the top of those parties and get the contributions so that they can run for office and get the promotions are the people who support the war machine. And, I'm running against the war machine. Oh, and I'm a threat to all of those interests.
Is there any satanic thing behind any of that? Any satanic thing behind any of that?
That is beyond my range of knowledge.
I'm sure you've heard things, though.
Yeah,
because we hear things. We hear things out here, and we hear that the powers that be are really a satanic group that is being disguised. So, I know in your profession, you will know something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't see themselves that way, but maybe they do. I don't know. We all have a capacity to judge ourselves based upon our intentions rather than our actions. You know what I mean? And people, can convince themselves that what they're doing, whatever it is right. I mean, people think, people believe that we're there helping the Ukrainian people in a fight for freedom. And that is the narrative. We're given these kind of comic book narratives. There's a good guy and a bad guy, and we're always on the good side. But we've been involved in, in hundreds of foreign wars, and Russia and China haven't. We need to start looking at our own involvement.
And not bothered by the idea that bringing this kind of stuff to the forefront puts you in danger by people who don't want it to stop.
I am, but I'm care. I take what care that I can. But I think it's more important. I mean, for me, I feel like I don't have a choice, that I need to fight this.
Okay. Why should anyone believe you?
Well, nobody should believe me. People should do their own investigation And, you know, if what I turn out and say, I think if you investigate it, that you'll be convinced that it's correct. But you shouldn't believe me just because I'm sitting here talking to you.
Okay. Secondly, why should anyone trust you? That your agenda is what you say it is, that once you get in office, these are the things that you're going to attempt to change. Or
Well, that's
because
the cliche is it doesn't.
Yeah, that's an easy one because I have a track record. You know, I have a track record over the last 18 years of standing up against corporate power and against government corruption and being punished for it constantly, being censored, being, you know, having suffering a lot of, you know, loss of friendship, losses of relationships, dramatic losses of income, and, you know, and loss of status, and the, you know, the power that I once had wielded because I'm a member of this family and because I had a long, credible record as an environmentalist. And I walked away from that for this battle, and people have watched me over years fight this battle. So, you know, I think I have I think if you talk to me, because you guys have not been following me, but I think if you talk to people or, you know, read about my track record, I think that would convince you that the one thing I am is trustworthy.
And people ask me all the time, Lori, why do you trust him? Why should we trust him? I trust him because I know him and I know his track record. And I know, just as I said about the debate earlier with Max, or any debate, once he says yes, he doesn't back out. It's always the other guy who backs out of the debate at the last minute, like Dr. Peter Hotez, who's ducked out of 3 debates now with Kennedy. Joe Biden won't debate Kennedy. And I hope that Trump will if he becomes the nominee. I'd really love to see those two go at it. And you know what else I'd like to see? I'd like to see Donald Trump do what Bobby just did and go to a barbershop and sit down with the Black community or any place in the Black community and have a real talk like those guys just did. Now, I realize because he's a former president, that may not be possible because there's always Secret Service around and they just won't let him get into a situation like that. They don't want to let people get too close to him. And Bobby does have somewhat of an advantage that he's not a former president and doesn't have Secret Service protection. As we know, Craig and Rick, this week he was denied his request for Secret Service protection, which he submitted back in May. And it took him 2 months, more than 2 months, almost 3 months to get back to him. And they denied his request, which to me is just incredible that anybody in the Kennedy family who's running for president would be denied Secret Service protection. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to compare Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Donald Trump would see a press, like a group of press people and sometimes walk over to them and just start talking to them. He would do that at time to time, so he's in a different boat than Biden, him along with all the establishment Democrats, they protect themselves. And I've been at plenty of DNC conventions before, and it's like they have blinders on. I try to get Pete Buttigieg coming out of a room in New Hampshire at one point, and he just kept himself smiling and moving straight forward until he got out of that room. I was trying to question him. Pardon Assange? Will you pardon Assange? I've been in a room where Kamala Harris just completely ignores people and keeps her head straight. That's why they really messed up when they let me and Fiorelli get into that press conference, and they were like, "Oh my Lord!" And you can just see the look on Kamala's face, on Andrew Yang's face, on Pete Buttigieg's face when they're like, "Who the hell is this person asking me questions, and what are they going to ask me?" So I think there is a difference between Trump and Joe Biden. However, no, a lot of people won't do what RFK is doing, is just go sit down and talk to people, and take the tough questions. So, I'm very interested, Laura. You said, that he's not going to back down from Max. I think Max was on the Hill today saying that, the communications director has not does not want that to happen. Therefore, it's not going to happen. So we'll see. You know what I'm saying? But
that's news to me.
Yeah, I believe RFK is genuine. You know, I don't like all his opinions and all his positions, but I do believe he's genuine. So, you know, that is something that a lot of people need right now and are looking for in their politicians.
Well, you know, like I said earlier, Kennedy campaign staffers really don't get a say in what Bobby does or doesn't do. He's going to do what he's going to do. And if he decides he wants to debate Max Blumenthal, and he said so publicly yesterday on the Jimmy Dore show, he's going to show up.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
Nobody
in the campaign is going to be able to stop him if that's what he wants to do.
I think it's going to be a conversation. You know what I'm saying? As much as a debate. I think they're going to be completely, on the opposite sides. And this is something that I think you said too, as recently as well, is like, listen, you don't like his opinion. You don't like his opinion. You're not going to change it. You know what I'm saying? You can say why you don't like it, but that's his decision. It sucks. And we have to deal with that sometimes. And listen, if those people out there say they're not going to vote for him or support him because of that reason, I don't, belittle them for that. That's their decision and stuff like that. But for some of us who are doing a cost benefit analysis and we want to support that campaign or the candidate, like I said, for me, it's all about just getting that campaign going as long as we can up until the convention, up until they trash him, talking about issues after issue after issue, educating people, opening their eyes to what's going on, stuff that would not be talked about if he wasn't there. That's what I'm all about. So I'm hoping to push it to the limit. But if you feel that way, so be it. But let's not trash each other over here. You know what I'm saying? That's what we don't want. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, I used to say, if Trump, after Bernie Sanders bowed out, so if Trump wants to know how to attack Hillary Clinton, he should go back and look at the way the burners were going after Hillary Clinton. Well, I think there's a lot of people who, they want to know how to trash RFK, they can watch and see the way some of these, the progressive left are trashing RFK, and they're almost doing the work of the Biden campaign somewhat.
Bingo. Thank you. That's what I've been saying. You're saving the Biden campaign a lot of work, guys.
Biden's the enemy right now, not RFK. Biden is the enemy.
Correct. What do you think, Rick? You want to chime in, buddy?
Well, I just don't think, honestly, I'm kind of with Craig. I don't think that RFK really has a chance, short of Biden keeling over and dying, unless maybe they'll bring another candidate in. But I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So yeah, if there's opportunity to discuss different issues, then there's something productive that can come out of that. That's fine. But I don't have much faith in the DNC machine, and I think he's with the wrong party. And the whole thing is a moot point, other than discussions about issues, which is fine. But I don't think he can win because they won't let him.
Yeah.
You know what we often say on this show, Craig, is that he should be running in the Republican Party. What do you think of that?
Either way, two sides of the same, bird, whatnot. Yeah, of course. If you think that might give him a better chance to win, yeah. But like I said, I define winning as this political discourse right now. I think that at the end of the day, and I don't want to say anything. Are you guys, is YouTube stream still up, or is it?
No, they cut us.
They cut us?
Yeah. And
I wondered.
I don't know.
Hell?
I got like a warning yesterday too. So
I know
they are.
Our channel just got another strike. Are we on strike 2?
No, they took content down. So I don't know where we're going to end up. I haven't looked to see what they're saying.
I've been demonetized on YouTube for close to 3 years right now. And every single time I reapply, it's coming back, harmful content, misinformation, not abiding by the guidelines. You never know exactly why. I'm sorry, guys, if that was me talking about elections that could have done it. But YouTube did say they were changing their guidelines to allow election conversation to take place. So, I do apologize.
But only 2020. We can talk about 2020 now. But now they're banning people for talking about the upcoming election, and specifically RFK Jr. They have they took down my channel. They put 3 strikes on me every time I had to upload a video about RFK for medical misinformation, whether we talked about vaccines or not. And I guess now that we're off YouTube, I can say that. So I just did. So there.
I think your feed's
do
still up on your YouTube channel. So
Oh, that's weird.
yeah, so you should
Very
be careful
strange.
there.
I don't know what's going on. There,
Different account though, right? So
something very strange is going on. You know, another thing that Kennedy supporters say, and we're saying this loudly to the DNC, and I hope they clean the wax out of their ears and listen. If you give us Joe Biden instead of RFK, we'll give you Donald Trump. We will. We'll go out and vote for Trump.
Well,
if you deny Kennedy the nomination, that's what we're going to do.
One of the things that Lori would, what people have said to me is that, well, it's a sheep herding process again. He's going to sheep herd people in like Bernie Sanders did just to vote for the Democrats. It's not going to happen with RFK. 90%, and I'm saying this with confidence, 90%, in my opinion, of RFK supporters' second choice is Donald Trump. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden. They're not going to vote for any Democrat. It's just not going to happen. So the sheep herding operation, which everybody's scared about, is just a moot point. It doesn't make a difference. They're not going to vote for the Democrat if they cheat or if RFK drops out. It's not going to happen. They're going to go vote for Trump.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And
once again,
go ahead.
Elections.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Who can tell?
Yeah.
Who can tell? And, that's why I think that despite all the naysayers who were frankly just disgruntled Democrats, a lot of the Bernie supporters that I know who got burned, not once, but twice, because a lot of them went back for more in 2020. They thought it was going to be different the next time around, that Bernie wouldn't sell them out twice. And then he did. And so they swore off of voting. They swore off of ever voting again for anybody, certainly not a Democrat. And they're so disgruntled and so angry that it's interfering with their ability to reason. And they're taking themselves out of the political process. I mean, you want change, but you say you're not going to vote. So how are you going to change things? Are you going to storm a government building and bring your guns and do a January 6th? Or how exactly do you change things if you don't vote?
Well, I'm not going to belittle people if they don't believe in the process and they don't believe it's fair and they're not going to do it. I don't know what they're going to do. And like I said, I'm not going to belittle them, but don't belittle me. That's
I'm not belittling them. I'm just asking an earnest question. I mean, if you don't vote, how do you change things?
I'm not going to. I'm not going to look down upon anybody who says they're not going to vote because they believe the system's unfair. I shouldn't use the word belittle. I'm not going to look down and I'm not going to hold it against them. But, don't hold it against me. And I've said this before, even as election integrity activist question system, I believe strongly in voting, and I'm not going to let them take that process away from me. You know what I'm saying? They got to pry my vote out of my cold, dead hands as far as I'm concerned. So that's where I'm at on the situation. So, I'm going to make them, I'm going to, leave as much evidence, as much, crumbs from the trail behind, as we can. And like once again, I'm watching my tongue on how do I speak over here because of the whole YouTube situation. But, I believe in it. And I believe that voting, whether or not in a rigged system, is important, because so many things come out of it. This is when people coalesce around the issues every 4 years. So I'm going to embrace that and I'm going to run with that.
Hey, Rick, could you take over for a couple of minutes? I've got something I have to take care of kind of urgently. I'll be right back.
You go ahead. Which kind of makes me wonder, since you've mentioned Trump, I see the two candidates as populist candidates, both of them, RFK and Donald Trump. I see a lot of similarities, overlap. What do you think the differences are?
Well, for one, I believe climate is a difference between, are we talking from RFK and the Republican Party, the two differences? Or
Yeah.
Over?
Well, specifically, I'm just interested in because there is so much overlap. And Lori just said, if you give us Biden, we'll give you Trump. I get that because I see the crossover appeal, even the same way there was crossover appeal with Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. But I'm also seeing that the Trump campaign this time around it's different. The campaign is different. The base of support is different. I see a lot more influence from, say, even the Q movement, the QAnon crowd, which I think is growing. And I think that, that sort of element is playing a much larger role in the Trump campaign this time around than it did the first time he was elected. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that movement in particular, the one you're talking about in Q, is just because there's a lot more desperation from people to have some form of accountability. At the end of the day, a lot of the Q drops and the Q mentality goes to these people having to pay the price for what they did to humanity. So I think people are just desperate for some form of accountability out there, especially when there's none. I mean, you just have to look at Hunter Biden, anybody who in office, and Sam Bankman-Fried, who just walked. So I think that's why the Q mentality still has some roots and still how it's growing. And there's a lot of people I know who say you have to drop that already and stop, believing in this stuff. It's just kind of and keeping you holding on. But the differences and areas of difference with the Republican Party, when you talk about the populist right, is definitely number one on the environment. I think at the end of the day, RFK, not the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party believes in the ESG movement. They believe in consolidation of the big companies swallowing up the small companies. They have this kind of, pipe dream that we should it should be put on the individual and not the corporations when it comes to the climate. I don't think that a lot of the conservative movement and the populist movement really cares about how much they drill, how much they frack. RFK is not that person. He's different when it comes to climate change. He believes in he no longer believes in a top-down approach, is what he said. He believes in a bottom approach, grassroots movement. But at the end of the day, that particular, when it comes to RFK, he's much more, I think, at least observant and friendly, realistically, to Mother Nature than, what the Democrats claim to be, So, and he has a history of fighting for that. So I think there's a big difference. I believe that RFK has stated that he wants to take on China economically. Whereas I believe that a lot of the populist right and the conservative movement, they don't, they'll easily be moved in and manufactured for a war with China. When I spoke at Rage Against the War Machine in Washington, D.C., I said to the crowd, we were talking about, there's a bill being floated around by some of the populist right, some of the congressional members in the House to end the war in Ukraine. And that was by Matt Gaetz. But I said, don't think for 1 second, Matt Gaetz, that we're going to be okay with you ending a war in Kiev just so you can bring a war in Taiwan, with Beijing. So I believe that a lot of the populist right and a lot of the conservative movement, the Donald Trump people, they also believe that China was the reason for the COVID release, the origins. And now a lot of them are starting to come to light, saying, oh my God, looks like America was involved, and this really is a homegrown thing. But China was their partner, their willing partner. So I think there's a big difference there. So those two areas in particular are the two areas for me that I say this is something I don't dig when it comes to the populist movement. War with China, the pro-Israel stance. You know what I'm saying? I would like to see a little bit more sympathy, a lot more sympathy, in fact, for the Palestinians and what's happened over there. And Mother Nature. At the end of the day, I still believe the populist right and the conservative movement is drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, I agree with that. The thing I wonder about with RFK is I see his approach as being sort of like a conservationist rather than a straight up environmentalist. But I kind of wonder how that will translate into actual policy in the end. Will he actually take us away from this woke climate change, tax the crap out of everybody, degrowth sort of approach to dealing with the environment? Or will he take something more moderate and more in the vein of a traditional conservationist, if you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. And I think that he has learned, I think a lot has changed over the last several years. And I think he saw what happened with the COVID protocols and that whole situation, the way it was used for manipulation, the way it was used for control. And I think he saw a lot of the same type of mentality with the ESG movement. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's changed his stance on that. So I do think he'll be more of a conservationist than, you know, one of this, let's go balls to the wall, let's stop this, let's put it on the individual. I think he has the ability, and he can actually point out the areas of concern where a lot of people can grasp. And in other words, he's not going to be a Green New Deal AOC type of person. I think, you know, his plan will be more practical. And I think that's better for us and everybody. Because, I mean, the Democratic, you know, a lot of this establishment Democratic mentality, you know, they look at energy as just burning oil with trucks and cars and everything like that. I look at energy as keeping grandma warm, you know, and being able to cook and whatnot. So I think he'll have a practical mindset when it comes to that. In fact, that's one of the areas I think that he will be able to champion, because he's had a history of going after polluters and real polluters, you know.
This is like way off in another field, but I'd like to get your take on this, and maybe it'll come back around to your answer to RFK and the election. But can you help me make any sense out of all this UFO talk and the aliens and the congressional thing? Is that what the heck is going on?
I have a video I can share with you that's a really quick one, and it will really shed some light on the situation. If you want to give me,
please, if you can help me make some sense out of this.
I have something that will make perfect sense for you. Give me 2 seconds. I have it right here. And yeah, I think this video said it best. So let me just, if you could give me sharing power again.
Sure. Yeah.
Here we are. This is it. If you can share that for me.
Yeah.
And here we are.
So the United States government is admitting that we do have a moon base and that there is a bear problem on said moon base.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, follow-up question. Are you fucking with us?
That's a really good question. No, we are not, and I would like to remind everyone to keep the language civilized. This is the White House.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, Bob Daniels, Newsweek.
Mr. Daniels.
How long have we had the moon base? And are these bears Earth bears, or are they from the moon?
I'm sorry, I'm not at liberty to disclose how long we have had this moon base at this time. We do believe these to be Earth bears. We have no reason to believe these to be lunar bears or even Saturn bears.
Todd Albright, PBS. There's Saturn bears?
I am also not at liberty to go into the various types of woodland life forms on Saturn or any of the other 12 planets.
9 planets.
Right. I've said much already. What I can show you is the images that have been beamed down to us from the Odyssey satellite system just a couple hours ago. This is the view out of the front door of the United States secret moon base. This was taken yesterday before we discovered the bear problem. And this one was taken just a couple hours ago. So, as you can see, bears everywhere.
Question, Mr. Secretary, Mr.
James.
Yeah, those bears appear to have guns and motorcycles.
We believe they may be involved in some sort of intergalactic drug cartel, perhaps affiliated with one of the interstellar wizard alliances.
Wizard alliances?
Yes, next question.
Just a thought, more of a shot in the dark, but we wouldn't happen to be invading Iran today, would we?
You got me.
I fell for it. You almost got away with that one.
No, I went too far. I almost had it. I should have stopped after the slides. I knew I should have stopped
I
there.
didn't think anything about it until the cartel thing, and I was like, what?
Okay, all right. Let's forget this whole thing. Who wants a drink? First round's on me. Come on.
Yeah! Now
There
it
you
makes
have it.
perfect sense.
That's how I feel about the Bears.
Yeah.
That's just about it. About the UFOs and everything. I really do just feel it's a distraction. I really do. And they're going to present more distractions as much as they can when they can, so they can. We were invading Iran today, weren't we? I thought that was genius, and that's why That's the way I look at the whole UFO situation. I do believe there is probably UFOs. If maybe I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's
I
a
don't know
distraction.
either.
I just think it's a distraction, Rick. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's why I said, well, was it last night? I said, if they really have UFOs, then just show me. And if you got an alien, just, let's bring them out. Otherwise, just how about we just shut up?
There's a reason they've been staying away. If intelligent life is out there in the universe, I think there's a reason they haven't made contact with us. I think we scare them.
Well,
maybe
I can see why. Yeah.
Maybe.
Those humans, man, they scare me. Humans scare me sometimes as much.
Well,
as
that was way off in left field, but I had to ask because I just wanted another sane person to shed some light on this.
I think it's a distraction.
Yeah,
I do too. I think so many of these culture war issues are a distraction. The UFO thing is a distraction. And honestly, even the Israel-Palestine thing that's got everybody's panties in a knot, I think that's a distraction too, to keep us angry and divided and fighting with one another. Because when it comes right down to it, Americans want to fix their country. We want to fix things at home. That's one of the winning messages that Donald Trump had, was America first. Before we worry about fixing Israel or fixing Russia or fixing China or fixing North Korea, we seem to be the self-appointed fixers of all that's wrong in the world while not cleaning our own house.
Well, I think that's the way we do fix it. We stop intervening. We pull out. I don't think that Israel-Palestine is a distraction. I think it's a serious problem. But even Dr. Shiva, he gave a good explanation about why. And Dr. Shiva's been really hard on Bobby Kennedy.
Yep.
But he gave a great example why, what we should do in Israel-Palestine. And that's just pull the plug. Get out of there. Don't mess around. Let them deal with them themselves. We should be closing down all these bases. We should stop spending such a ridiculous amount on our military budget. Remember the whole Dianne Feinstein thing where just say I. Everybody was talking about that, but nobody was talking about the fact that we are increasing the military budget annually to $823 billion with a B. We need to stop intervening. We need to pull out. And that's what we need to do. We need to let these situations, fix themselves or let them be dealt with themselves. Other countries, we shouldn't be the fixers anymore. And that's what you get when you got 800 plus bases around the globe.
Right. And, I agree with you on that. Bobby has pledged to close damn near every one of those bases around the world and get our troops the hell out of places where they don't belong. But, I don't mean to say that the Israel-Palestine issue is not important. It is. But in poll after poll, when you talk to voters, what are the issues that are top of mind for voters? The Israel-Palestine thing doesn't even register in the top 10. They're more interested in the price of gas, the price of groceries, the price of rent, the price of medical care, things like Medicare for all. That's also a big concern for voters. There's a long, long list, and somewhere down the list comes foreign policy. But it's way, way down the list, and that's unfortunate.
But it is connected, right, Lori? I mean, the money was spent. We could take that money. We could take that money and bring it home. That's the point about, what I'm saying? And that's an area where, a lot of people, when we talk about foreign policy, that's $823 billion. And that's when he had that town hall, he was saying, they were like, well, where are you going to find the money for this? I'm going to close these bases. I'm going to cut them. I'm going to cut this budget down. I'm going to use that money and spend it right here at home. So.
Damn right. And I think that we all want that. I think that would go a long way towards solving the problem. And frankly, after 60 years, if Israel can't fight their own battles, then they don't deserve to exist as a country. We've armed you and funded you since the very beginning of your country. Let's time to take the training wheels off and see if you can ride this bike by yourselves.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
That's exactly what President Kennedy said about Vietnam. In 1963, when he started pulling troops out of there, he said, this war is going to have to be won by the Vietnamese people, not us. That's the
You know,
foreign policy that Kennedy pursues also.
what he has
Except
said
on
too,
Israel.
one of the biggest things, the most important thing that he said that I really like, and I think is awesome, is the fact is that the mentality of China. I was talking to Rick about one of the differences between Kennedy and the Republican Party is I believe that the Republican Party doesn't want war. They're still neocons, and they would gladly take the money out of Kiev and spend it to poke the bear in Beijing. And that's a big thing. Kennedy says, no, what we need to do, and this is kind of really deep, we need to take on China economically. Because how do we do that? Well, we got to start making things in the United States again. We got to start fixing things in the United States again. If we want to take on China economically, that says a lot about what we need to do here at home. And I think people, unfortunately, they're not seeing that the way I see it. When he says, I want to take on China economically, I get excited. I'm like, hell yeah, let's go back to the manufacturing and fixing things days for when our parents can buy a house at a factory job, right? The street sweeper used to buy a house and go away on vacation. Now the guy who sweeps the streets lives on the streets. And that's the difference between back then and now. So when he says, let's take on China economically, that says more than just like, let's challenge China. That says, let's change the way we do things here at home. And that's important.
Amen. Preach. So
do you think they can achieve that without tariffs because of the differences in wages? That's why you had companies shifting production to other countries to begin with, big companies. Trump was embracing tariffs as an economic tool. Years ago, I was always a big free trader, but I've come to this new place where it's like because other countries around the world subsidize things, they manipulate their economies through central planning. You can't compete in an open international market where other countries are cooking their economies with currency manipulation, with central planning, with government control. If you are simply a laissez-faire free market economy, because certain industries simply can't compete against the juggernaut of government subsidies and grants to particular companies and industries. So you have to combat that with either equal subsidies and programs like we see here in Canada with farmers, or you have to impose tariffs of some kind. So how do you think RFK would approach that?
I'd use the word central planning there, Rick. I love that word, right? Like everybody's scared of central planning, and you're right. Like when Donald Trump did try to have his little kind of butting heads with Xi Jinping in China, the tariffs that were slapped upon there were designed to try to bring some manufacturing back home. It was specific. It was aimed and targeted to do so, but it didn't work because, we have something called the North American NAFTA, right? And these things don't allow us to even be able to be competitive by having a workforce at home. I think what you have to do is you have to pick specific areas. And I think the area that we pick right now is our food, the small farmer, bringing them back, finding some subsidies and some ways for them to do things here at home. And we do that by getting away from the GMO foods. We don't allow these big corporations at home to use all these awful practices when it comes to our food. And I think the American people will buy that. I think a lot of conservatives will buy the central planning part because now, after COVID, they're all health freaks out of the blue, right? Because they understood that, hey, man, the government is never looking out for us. The FDA doesn't care about us. Big Pharma doesn't care about us. And a lot of these people were always touting, we have the best medical system on the planet over here. Well, now they're going, wait a second, no. And what they're doing to our food is awful. So I think that's an area where we can start the ball rolling and see what happens down the road. There used to be some, love for the Made in America tag, but maybe we have to bring it back again, and allowing these companies to just go overseas and use their workforce for pennies on the dollars is terrible. But also the reason why those economies are so torn down is the United States does that. They make sure that these countries are destabled. So therefore they can go in there and extract these resources for pennies on the dollars. The same people who are screwing us here in the United States, corporation-wise, they're screwing us in Latin America. They're the ones raping those resources and taking those things and stuff. So, I mean, we just got to start little by little. So there is a way to do it. You know, I believe repealing NAFTA right away, repealing Glass-Steagall right away, repealing the crime bill right away, the
Well,
Patriot
it's
Act.
the
There's so many things you could do.
USMCA now. It's not NAFTA anymore.
NAFTA's gone. Trump
It's not,
did
yeah,
get rid of
NAFTA's
that.
gone, but it's, what is it called? The
USMCA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a better deal than NAFTA, but it's still not perfect in my opinion.
Still hurts us. Still, we have to find a way, and you know, we have to make things here again, and we have to fix things here again. Otherwise, we'll never get out of this. We have to find a way to build a workforce. It has to be done. I mean, if we don't, we're just dead in the water. We got a complete service economy over here, and that's not good for anybody. You know.
Well,
Right.
we have a currency based economy. It's all about currency manipulation. It's about perpetual debt. Now it's not about being productive. It's just about screwing around with the money supply, using the power of the world default currency against other countries, backing that up with a worldwide global military to really prop that up, where it used to be oil. Now it really is. I mean, it was oil backed up by guns. Now it's going to be pretty much the guns, because other countries are beginning to trade in oil with other currencies, including Russian and Chinese currencies.
Yeah.
So
Saudi Arabia, right? The digital
it's
yuan
coming to an end, man.
China.
Yeah.
That was the only thing holding our value for our currency was the fact that the Saudis agreed to only sell in the petrodollar, right? And the United States dollar. Now it's, forget about it. Now we're in a world of trouble, and we can't print our way out of this as much as the MMT people would like you to believe. It's not going to work. So
precisely. That's why we need to do something. I'm with you, man. We need to bring the manufacturing back. We need to start actually adding real productivity, real value to the economy. And you have to do that by producing things.
Damn right.
I think
And
the
how would
small
you
farmer
guys?
needs to come back.
I'm curious. How would you guys rate Trump's performance on that as president? He said he was going to do that. How did he actually do?
I think he was doing well. I think the tariffs were working, but he only had 4 years. It took him time to get things in place. He was constantly doing battle with, legal challenges and impeachments and all the other crap. And then COVID comes along, right? So, but I think those policies were having an impact. You were seeing some manufacturing move back into the U.S. and even in Canada as a result of it from overseas. But it needed more time. I think the tariffs were, overall kind of a good approach. Not perfect by any means, but it's protectionist policy. But I don't have much of a problem with that, because free traders will say, "Oh, but it has to be a free." There is a free market in my view, in the international scope, because you have countries trading with each other, and that's all fine. That is a free market system on display right there. But each country then manipulates its own economy to one degree or another, because they have domestic economic policies where they'll subsidize, like in Canada, the dairy industry, right? And that's a good example where Canadian farmers have their production capped. They limit imports from the U.S. severely in order to protect the market here with tariffs. So there's this domestic policy there, but you could get rid of those and you'd be trading internationally between countries. Every country, through various trade deals, makes agreements. And that is basically deciding what the price of any particular transaction is going to be on the international market. But if you have China subsidizing auto part production over there by incentivizing the construction of factories with tax breaks, subsidies, outright grants, or government control, and they can build huge mega factories and then dump huge amounts of government money into it without regard for even how profitable it truly is, then you can't necessarily compete back home if you're relying strictly on private investment and laissez-faire economics and people just investing privately in something because you can't scale it up that quickly. You need a lot more time. So the only way to protect your free market at home is to impose tariffs against the international market to insulate particular industries on the domestic front.
But isn't that a form of economic punishment? See, I'm very anti-sanctions. I think that one of the reasons why America and Canada and Europe have become so prohibitively expensive to live in. You know, Robert Kennedy recently said that poor people can no longer afford to live in the United States, and he is exactly right. And the reason for that, at least in my view, is we're sanctioning the hell out of everybody. You know, we need to lift the embargo with Cuba, which Kennedy has said he would do. We sanction the hell out of all of our enemies, and that's one of the things I thought that Trump got wrong, was that he imposed incredible sanctions against Russia, which set the stage.
Yeah, but you know, sanctions and
today.
tariffs are kind of two different things.
Right.
A tariff is an economic tool. A sanction is a weapon.
Yeah.
And if you're imposing like tariffs to protect farmers at home so that you can then have family farms, to insulate them against, you know, factory farming in pick a country, it doesn't matter where, then, you know, maybe that's a good thing. And yes, it is in a way still a tax domestically on people at home, but not entirely, because really what you're doing is you're then incentivizing people through price mechanisms to purchase domestically produced products, which ultimately it protects the market, because now you're going to have less consumption of imported goods and increased consumption of domestically produced goods. So it's a tool, and I think that in an international market where other countries are free to manipulate their economies in various ways, as I've already mentioned, it's the only option that is really left on the table. And the United States and Canada, because they embraced for so long these free trade ideals, and I think, honestly, it was the elites, if you want to call them that embraced that for a very selfish purpose, which was to keep the market open, to flood the market with the goods that they invested in foreign markets so they could produce them for pennies on the dollar and still have access to the domestic market through a laissez-faire free market system, and then sell those imported goods at a much lower price at the expense of domestic production and the working class at home. So it was a bastardization of what the free market is. And then, you know, I'm sorry, but people then on the left turn around and say all this unemployment is the result of capitalism, which is true, because you're dealing with capitalism in the sense that they're using just capital or money in order to leverage productive wealth without actually increasing the standard of living at home, right? So they're using the free market in a bastardized way. And there's a difference, in my view, between a free market and capitalism. Capitalism can actually be quite evil if you're just using money to make money without actually producing more, especially when you're then producing something in a foreign country, using your capital to leverage your wealth, and then selling it back into a market where you're not investing anything to create new jobs and new wealth and a higher standard of living and contributing to your country and even your local communities, so that everybody suffers, right down to the local baseball team that can't get sponsorship for their little league because all the crap is coming from China or from Venezuela or Vietnam, where people there also aren't making a livable wage. You know, that's one of the things that Trump got right with the USMCA. Even though, you know, one of the things was in the auto industry, for instance, that deal actually raised the wages for auto workers in Mexico. It improved the standard of living for people in Mexico, while at the same time ensuring that domestic production and workers in the United States were better protected as well. So it kind of did level the playing field and raise raise the standard of living for all of the workers in all three countries. So he really was kind of getting it right. NAFTA never did that. I can tell you right now, I used to work at an auto parts place just for fun, and everything produced in there, it doesn't matter if it's brake parts, you name any automotive part, spark plugs, stuff that used to be produced, a lot of it right here in my hometown, China, everything made in China. I found a pack of brake pads on the shelf. It said made in USA on it. I took them off the shelf one day and I'd go, and the dust flew off them, right? Everything else was China. It was like one box of brake shoes.
And they were probably the most expensive ones.
They were actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so everybody bought the cheap Chinese ones.
Yeah, and I had to like dust them off, like scrape
One
off.
area, though, I'm curious, Rick, what you
gathering
think.
dust.
One area where I think that a lot of people have failed, and Bernie Sanders used to talk about it. Joe Biden signed a Fugazi bill as infrastructure, right? Like we can really get a lot of jobs here at home if we were to rebuild America. We have no high-speed rail anywhere. China looks like a futuristic town, and we look like crap. And if we were to do that in a way where we wouldn't subsidize, the private-public partnership with, foreign companies to come in, and we would actually use good old American labor, that's a way we can throw some money into a workforce.
That can be a good thing. That's Keynesian economics. That's like a make work public project, to stimulate the economy. And that can be okay if it truly ends up being an actual investment in the country where there's payback over time, where there's value added as a result of it. And that's fine. Unfortunately, I think that, a lot of what goes on with our economies now is they turn those kinds of projects into profit centers for the mega oligarchs who just step up to the trough and start to feed.
Their friends and donors are the ones who get the contracts. And by the way, I'd like to point out that Trump crowed a lot about infrastructure. He said he was going to fix the infrastructure. Biden passed a huge infrastructure bill pledging to fix our broken infrastructure. And meanwhile, our highways, bridges, and train rail lines are collapsing every day. So where the hell did that money go? Where are those projects they promised?
Went to Ukraine. They should have
They're
taken
the pockets of
just
contractors.
a fraction of that money, and they could have fixed every pothole in the country and fixed every bridge.
Yeah.
And that would have been an investment, because then you can get your trucks on the road and you can get your goods to market and you can build your high-speed rail and you can upgrade the rail line so that the brakes don't fail on the trains and end up derailing in East Palestine and contaminating, part of the farmland there, and then have people freak out and think that there's a mass genocide underway. I mean, all of this crap, if they just would focus on doing good things for the country, productive things, making life better, raising the standard of living for people, engaging in growth-focused policies, then we'd be in a much, much better position. Even if it was all through central planning, if they would invest in the country and invest in the people and invest in jobs, invest in actual capital, like physical capital, like productive factories and even in infrastructure, better hydro lines, which, in many areas are falling apart. All of these things that creates long-term economic benefit and social benefit for the entire country, right down to local communities.
Lori, it looks like we found the communist on the panel over here. He's talking about central planning and the whole 9 yards. Wow. Look at that, Rick.
He's been hanging around my commie friends too much. I think they're starting to rub off on him a little bit.
Well, I'm with you guys in this regard. I don't think that there's any pure political or economic system anywhere in the world. It's all kind of a hybrid. There's a give and take all the way across. Any system that works really well has to be like that anyway, because you have people with different points of view, different needs, different perspectives, and you have to be able to compromise. You need to have that kind of flex in any system. If you don't, you end up being an authoritarian anyway, in which case, I'm not on board with that either. So it doesn't matter if you go to Russia or China or North America. It doesn't matter. If really, when it comes right down to it, if you went to any of these countries and you look at the way the systems work, they're all really very much kind of similar. It's just that the United States has that default currency, and it's. But at the end of the day, it's like I've said so many times before. It's like, as long as my garbage is picked up on Tuesdays, then the government's doing its damn job.
Just pick
Otherwise,
up the damn garbage.
that's right. And then after that, just kind of like get the hell out of the way. Make sure that you just do your job and pick up the garbage.
Just pick up the garbage. How hard is that?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, in my town, they can't get that right, so they have to outsource it to a private company. So
exactly. I have a private company pick up my garbage
Yep.
too.
Yeah, and they do a fine job, by the way. So it's
yeah.
good that they do outsource it, but at least they had the common sense to do that. As long as it's picked up, and it is on a regular basis, I'm fine, because then there are no rats around the place. The occasional mouse, but at least we don't have rats.
We got plenty of rats in DC and in our politics, and that's why we're here on Maverick News every night, telling you about these rats and exposing them. That's our job in the independent media, because we're not cheerleaders for anyone. Even me, I'm working on the Kennedy campaign. People accuse me of being a cheerleader.
You are, until you're not.
Yeah, until I'm
not. And then they
not.
attack you.
And then they attack me. When I agree with them, that's the best part. That's the punchline.
Sometimes you got to do what we tell Gonzalo Lira to do. Just
shut
up.
That's right.
You're not gonna win them over. Just it. All right.
Oh,
I've seen everything I have to see here. Gonna move right along and go
We're
elsewhere.
still fighting. I've been off doing my own thing and working all day and doing Maverick News, and my notifications on my phone are just going crazy because all these leftists are fighting with themselves and each other, and I'm just staying the hell out of it. You children go right ahead. Leave me out of it. No thanks. But I appreciate you, Pasta, for coming on and talking with us and having a reasonable, civil discussion about the issues that really matter. That's all I'm trying to do. That's all Mr. Kennedy's trying to do. And I think that's all you're trying to do. And that's all Rick's trying to do, is we're trying to, bridge the divide, bring people together who might be political opposites and get them to talk to each other. That's the whole reason I do Strange Bedfellows. That's the point of the show. Politics does make strange bedfellows, and dudes, we live in interesting times, don't we? I mean, when a guy like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets more donations and more support from the right, from the Republicans, that's unprecedented in our entire history of politics. You would think that, naturally he's a Democrat, so the Republicans should be the ones attacking him. That's always the way it goes, but not this time. Not this time. All of the attacks are coming from the Democrats this time, from the left. I haven't seen a single right-wing publication or news outlet or pundit attack Robert Kennedy. So we live in an upside-down world, guys. All the rules have changed. And it's only the establishment that doesn't realize yet that the rules have changed. But the people are changing those rules. We're having our say. And we're going to have our say at the polls next year. So thank you once again for joining us. And where can people follow you? Where can they watch the show?
Well, I'm at Yo Pasta on Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it nowadays, right? I have at Yo Pasta at my Instagram. The Convo Couch is my show on YouTube with Fiorella Isabel. We are also on Rockfin and on Rumble. So you can always find us there. And, if you want to go to givesendgo.com/RFK Media, I am going to get out there and ask him the tough questions. I always say this, whether you like him or you love him, or you dislike him or you love him, help me out. Help me get in the room. We need some honest, journalism to get out there and ask him the tough questions, or ask him the questions that the people need to be heard, that want to hear these particular questions, not the BS questions you get from the mainstream media. So go to RFK Media. That's givesendgo.com/RFK Media. Get me in that room. If RFK has a night off and I'm out there and Dr. Cornel West is there, he's also said I have an open invitation to go to his events, and I'll do that. Vivek Ramaswamy. I plan to have a campaign for the campaign, so you can find me over there. And thank you so much, Lori and Rick, for having me on. I had a fun time tonight.
I love that you're doing that. And I love that RFK, unlike so many other presidential candidates, is more than happy to let you in the room and answer whatever questions you may have.
Yeah.
We need more of that instead of politicians ducking and dodging and giving us word salad and 5-minute platitudes that say absolutely nothing when you ask them a question. At least with Kennedy, when you ask him a question, he'll give you an answer. You might not like the answer. You know, like this week, everyone on the Israel-Palestine thing, they didn't like his answer, and they kept coming to me going, well, ask him again. And they went to Jimmy Dore yesterday, you know, bugging him through the whole live stream going, ask him again, ask him again. Like they think they're going to get a different answer this time. And then they were disappointed again when he gave them the same answer. I mean, he'll give you a consistent answer and an honest one every time. You may not like it, but that's who he is. And I think people need to learn to accept that about Bobby Kennedy.
They should. And the fact that they wanted him to go after him right away and not have the interview and take the time. And, you know, Jimmy had a spot where he says, well, let's get to the uncomfortable part of the interview. And he was doing that. But the whole time, everybody was like, go after him, go after him, go after him. It tells you the mindset of where people are nowadays. I think they just need to pump the brakes a little bit and relax. And, hey, you know, if you get your own interview with RFK, you can ask him whatever you want, whenever you want. So I think Jimmy did a pretty solid job, you know, and I commend him for it. And, you know, there was a part where, you know, he was asking RFK those questions. And, you know, I think RFK has a hard time answering. He feels a certain way about Israel, but it's hard because he knows that there's going to be pushback. But he's still going to give the answer that he believes is the right answer. And whether we like it or not, at least he's honest about it. He's genuine. I'll give him that.
Yeah, and I thought the best thing Jimmy did in that interview was, that's why I love Jimmy Dore. He's an honest man. He just said, look, I'm going to be honest. I don't know enough about this issue to debate you. So why don't you debate Max Blumenthal instead? Because he's the expert. And a lot of people are giving Jimmy hell for that today, saying that you didn't push back hard enough. You didn't, you know, why didn't you turn RFK over your knee and spank him? I think Jimmy was just being honest when he said, look, guys, I'm out of my depth. This is a very complex issue, not my issue. I don't understand it. I'm going to leave it to someone who knows this better than me. And that's Max Blumenthal.
And people should be happy about that, right? He got RFK to agree to a debate interview with Max Blumenthal. Yeah. What more do you guys want? You guys are still complaining about that?
They're never happy. Never happy, I tell you.
Never happy.
Some people are just never happy. Well, I hope you guys have a happy evening. Thanks, everybody, for watching Maverick News. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Craig. And Craig, you're awesome. I hope you will come back and join us again.
Yeah, it's been an
just
absolute
guys,
pleasure.
pay attention in the next couple of days. You might see me out there in the field. Like I said, I'm going to go do my work. I'm not saying what I'm going to do, but just pay attention in the next couple of days. I'm sure you'll hear from me guys.
Got it.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Craig. And I'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Same bad time, same bad station on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.